Well, hello there. Welcome along to another live stream here with me, Jennifer Kirk. And today, actually, we're a little bit early, actually. So, for those of you watching the pre-record, you're probably thinking, what on earth is she talking about? But just waiting for people to come up. We announced that this would start from 7 o'clock, 1900 GMT. And we've got a few minutes to go, so just letting people rock on up so then we can crack on with the Oxford Rail announcements. So we've got Duffans, GWR, hello to you, and also that guy who would not share his name, hello to you too. We've got Camels Model Railway. Hi there to you too. So we've got people coming on in. We're gonna shoot the breeze a little bit before we crack on with the announcements. I have to say the announcements from Oxford Rail have been probably somewhere closer to the Bachmann announcements than the Hornby announcements in terms of the amount of stuff that's come through. Oh, excuse me there. So it's not going to be as big a deal as when we did the Hornby live stream. Hello there to Andrew Keeley and Red Pop Man. We're getting a few people coming through. Nice to see you all. And as we go through, feel free to share your comments in the live chat. It's always good to hear what you think as well about these models. And I'm going to try and find pictures online of prototypes, things like that, as we go through. But today, this morning, London Toy Fair has been on, and it's traditionally when Oxford Rail make their announcements, and actually they've not really talked an awful lot up to this. It's not been like all the spin and hype to do with the Hornby and the Bachmann announcements. This has kind of been very low key, and if you didn't have your ear to the ground, then it'd be very easy to miss Oxford Rail's announcements. They don't make a big fanfare of it. But there's some big ticket things here. Well, one in particular, one locomotive we've got in a variety of liveries, and a few different wagons have been announced, but actually not a great many. So it's odd in a way. I think a lot of things like renumbers are announced as and when throughout the year. So I'm just looking down the list now, and if I just going to go to the Facebook page, Oxford Rail are announcing stuff on their Facebook page rather than anywhere else. In fact, actually, if you go to the Oxford Rail home website, there's nothing on there. 26th of September last year seems to be the last time they actually bothered to update it, which is really annoying in a way because there's so much happened since this point, and it's showing livery samples for the N7. Well, I've just filmed a review of this very locomotive, so it's well beyond livery samples. It's actually in the shops. Looking at the comments, yes, I am well, Divans GWR, hope you are too. We've got Simon Derry, hi Jennifer, love your YouTube channel. Well, thank you very much. Chorley Junction, evening to you too. And Chorley Junction, evening Zoe. She's not in here actually, she's next door playing I'm wanting to say Neverwinter, I don't know, some computer thing. I hear they're quite popular these days. But Andrew Keeley, Oxford new N7, quite impressive. Not my example. I've got a dud, it turns out. When I was doing the review, I went to get some running footage of it, and, well, I discovered an issue or two. So hopefully everybody else who's got one of those has fared better, but I was deeply, deeply disappointed, and I've had it dismantled downstairs after the filming, and I'm actually struggling to find anything wrong with it visibly. There's no obvious sign of why I've had the problems that I've had, but it's probably one of those things that you prod and poke and don't actually change anything, but when you put it all back together, mysteriously it works perfectly. Anyway, we're coming up on the time, so we should probably have a look down through the Oxford Rail announcements. And as you can see here, it's no big secret. A newly tooled J27, formerly the Northeastern Railway Class P3, has been the big announcement. And I don't know, there's one picture here as far as I can tell. That's a prototype picture, probably somewhere like Darlington. And that's all we've got to go on. There's no actual test shots or anything like that. All we've got is the prototype photograph. And actually, I mistook the J27. I got it mixed up with the what looks outwardly fairly similar, the J21. So I was going off to have a look through the website for the preserved J21, and of course it's not that. It's a slightly different locomotive. There is one preserved example of this, and I'm going to, let me see if I can find, let's go to Google and let's have a look at some photographs of the Woodsell, I'm making a hash of my typing, Woodsell J27. And let's have a look at the images so we get a better idea of what we're actually looking at. And so here we've got, this is the preserved locomotive, resplendent in full Northeastern Railway livery. That actually looks really good, but it has to be said that that is not a livery that Oxford Rail have announced. So if I go back to the list, it's quite telling. We've got the Oxford Rail J27 here. We've got 4 different versions announced. So we've got LNER number 1010. In fact, let's see, can we find an LNER? I don't know whether that, let's have a look. That's a Darlington. Northeast, it could be Northeastern Railway or it could be LNER. I'm not entirely sure. That looks to be the plain LNER livery. It's not not the best photograph for looking. Let's just have a look further down. Can we find? Yeah, it's probably. Oh, they're all very small, but certainly we've also got LNER with red lining, number 1214. So let's see. I suspect that the LNER with red lining, you're pretty much looking at that livery, but with LNER rather than Northeastern Railway on the tender. I'll have a wild stab at the dark at that. And actually, that's probably why Oxford Rail haven't announced a pre-grouping livery, a Northeastern Railway version of this, because the LNER with the red lining version is probably very similar. So it would probably be their opinion that the Northeastern Railway liveried one will become a bit niche. That said, we might see a version later on. Excuse me there, I'm just slurping back a bit of Coke. So I'm just looking down, and this livery actually intrigues me. I'm going to assume that that's a Northeastern Railway livery. It doesn't give us a clue to lining. There doesn't appear to be any lining there, but it's very similar to the livery which the North British Railway used for various locomotives. So there may be a pre-grouping livery version coming in the future as part of the future releases. But I'm looking down here that there's certainly a few different livery options open to Oxford Rail. I'm looking at here, plain black with British Railways fully spelled out on the tender. But let's go back and have a look at the other liveries they are doing. So we're going to get BR early, BR late, and the 2 different LNER ones. And really, they are the highlight of Oxford Rail's announcements. Of course, very early days, there's nothing really to show you other than those prototype locomotive pictures. So it's a welcome addition. I think it scored quite highly in all of the votes that get carried out of models that people want to see, and I think the J27 has consistently scored in the top 10. So I think it's going to prove a very popular model, and that picture actually intrigues me. Where is that? I think unless I go to the website, it's not going to show me. But certainly, that looks like it's had a bit of a calamity. Where is this? Oh, that's somebody's. Is that somebody's model? Yeah, that's somebody's model. They have been available in kit form. So those of you who are quite happy to put together kits, it is a model that has been out there. But for those of you like me who don't really trust yourself to building a kit, it's nice that we're going to finally see these ready to run. So I'm looking at down the comments. Yes, the Adams was problematic also, wasn't it? Funnily enough, I got a live Adams radial. I know some of the earlier versions had some issues with it was the flexibility of the actual pony trucks, the bogies, and it wasn't allowing the locomotive enough vertical movement. So as soon as the locomotive passed over uneven track, something like point work, it was possible for the driving wheels to lose traction and just be ending up just spinning in midair, and that was the problem with the Adams radial. But credit to Oxford Rail, they did fix that in later releases. Bionic Geek Girl, hi, hope your cold has improved today. Hello to you too, and yes, my cold is much improved, thank you very much. James McCready, hello to you too. It looks pretty lush, you say. Yeah, certainly, if Oxford Rail bring out a decent model of the J27, then I keep going back to this photograph. This photograph really catches my eye, and I think if they get this right, it's going to be quite a pretty little locomotive. And it's also, as a mixed traffic locomotive for the northeastern area, I think that they've got a really good stab for this, and helped in a way that the J39 complete retool from Bachmann has been pushed right back. So whereas this sort of type of locomotive would have been competing in model form for sales against the J39, the fact that we're now not going to see that for the foreseeable future means I think that the market is wide open for this, as long as it gets to the market and as long as it is a good, credible model. Now I'm going to have a look down through the list, and yeah, we can see here we've got the picture of the Railgun, the Bosch Buster, and I actually I noticed on these that the thing that always leaps out at me with these is that what they call the catalogue number for this. Its catalogue number has boom within it. Let me try and find the Oxford. Oh, I was already on it. But if you look there at the catalogue number, OR76 boom 03. So that's pretty good. So just a little nod there. And this is the World War I railgun in the full camouflage livery. Now, we haven't actually had our hands on any of these yet. They were announced last year, I think. And we've yet to see them in the flesh, other than when I was at Worley. They had one in the cabinet, along with a few other things. At the time, we hadn't seen the N7, but they had models in the cabinet, and what I saw looked really good. But they're announcing this extra livery, and I think this camouflage is going to prove popular. It's really quite eye-catching, so it's certainly something to be interesting to see. And let's have a look. We've also got the snowplow accessory is available now for the first time on its own. I'm just going to go and see on this website, are we getting any other pictures? I'm just going to scroll through and see. No, pictures seem to be in short supply. So we've got just got that picture really of the prototype. There are also announced we're going to get the Carillion Land Rover Defender. This is I think it's not a motorised model, but they've done a few of these in different liveries, and it sort of sits with rail wheels, so you can mount it as a scenic thing. They've announced a new livery for that. And then we've also got the Tillmanstone Company 5-plank wagon. And this is a re-livery, but I think this ties in with the East Kent Railway anniversary set. And this is the loco with 2 of the Tillmanstone wagons with different running numbers. And I'm assuming that they're going to be different running numbers from the one that's available separately. However, a lot of people have said about this, it's come into some criticism, and from me as well, because that particular East Kent Railway liveried locomotive has been out for quite some time. And it appears to be the cynic in me is thinking that this is Oxford Rail's attempt to move some of that slow-moving stock. We had actually had a similar thing with National Railway Museum in Bachman released a set with the Midland compound in the National Railway Museum Midland livery, is it number 1000, along with 2 coaches. And I think a lot of that was about slow moving stock. Right, let's have a look at some of the comments. Yes, Bionic Geek Girl, totally agree with you. With the recent anniversaries of the armistice, it will prove popular, expect, with collectors and modelers alike. Certainly is. And one of the other things that Oxford Rail had already announced is a rail operating division liveried version of the Dean goods. So we're starting to get some of these ROD liveried models coming through. They also have announced it's due imminently a War Department black liveried model. And I think that's actually from when the Dean goods went back to war in the Second World War. And I think there's at least one example of the Dean goods which served in both World Wars, the same locomotive. So that's something to look forward to if you're wanting to model military railways. I believe there's also one of the previously announced railguns is suitable for a World War II period. We've got the Hattons P-Class has come out with 2 different rail operating division liveries. We've also got announced a Robinson 8K from Bachman. Yet to see that, but eye-watering price, it has to say. Let's have a look down. Right, Piccadilly Model Railway by John Warner. Hi Jenny, blimey, you were really enjoying the live stream lark. Well, actually, I think it really suits these kind of videos, and I like the fact that I can interact directly with people, and hopefully you too get something out of this, that you can, we can interact in real time. I used to do question and answer sessions, and people kind of submitted their questions in advance, and it just felt very stilted. So I much prefer this, and I think with the immediacy of these releases, not so much releases, but announcements from the manufacturers, I think this format lends itself to it. Philbin videos. What about the J420? Not sure what you mean by that. You might have to clarify. Mark Rice. Hi Jen, have you seen a webpage called Rail Roundabout? You will love it. About 1960 steam and more. It was BBC Films. Yeah, I've heard about that. Not been to the website, but I am aware of that one. John Nutman, evening Jenny, hope you had a good day. Thank you very much. It's been all right. It's been quite busy, very cold. We've had a lot of snow here. So I got some photographs earlier on when the snow first started. It had a flurry, then it stopped. And then the sun came out very briefly, and I got some lovely photographs of one of my O-gauge models on the Garden Railway. And now it's snowing again now. I'm just looking at the cameras. It's stopped, but there's a good smattering on the ground. Hornby Modeler, hi again. Hi to you. No, you're not late. Same, Scott Cameron. Not late, really. Philbin videos. Jenny, will there ever be a sequel to The Locket? I don't know. You'll have to ask Zoe. That was filmed quite a long time ago, and it was okay. It was fun to film it, actually. You can find a behind the scenes video, I think, somewhere on YouTube, which it may even be part of a vlog video. But it was like super low budget. But the idea was to film a horror type film on minimum budget, just 2 people having a good time. And it was great fun. I mean, I probably look a lot thinner on it as well, because I was. We filmed it just by Hallithwood Hall, and it was pretty cool actually. And one of the things I like about it is I did the music for it as well, so it's a very rare that you will hear any of my compositions, but the entire music in the Locket is written, composed, and performed by me. So there we go. Not just a pretty face, and when you see me in my usual credits playing drums, I really am playing those drums. JTO Kipper 2008, Jennifer, where is the Locket sequel? Again, as I said before, that's entirely up to Zoe. I'm not even sure if she's planning a sequel. Angus's Trains, hi Jenny, remember me? Yes, you from New South Wales in Australia. How could we forget you? Welcome back. Wolfie Wolf, Shed Chat has taken on a new life with the live feeds. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And Duffans GWR, I will be getting the Dean Goods and Railgun in Rod to go with my relivery of one of the Hornby GWR 101 pocket rockets with modern chassis. Yeah, I think a lot of this World War One period stuff, it's a shame in a way that it didn't come out a couple of years ago. In time for the anniversary. I think they would have done even better with it then, but better late than never. But let's get back to the Oxford Rail announcements. Really, the only other things that we've got here are we've got weathered in Wales and heavily weathered in Wales 7-plank open wagons, BR open, I'm assuming, and we've also got Cobo wagon there. And this is something that Oxford Rail have started doing. They're using, I'm wondering whether actually they're doing it through Daypol, because Daypol were very, very keen to push their weathered in Wales range, which have the Welsh Dragon on, and it goes through a process in their factory there, and they're very proud of the fact that they are bringing production back to the UK in a lot of instances. So I'm wondering whether that's a deal between Oxford Rail and Daypol, but if not, it's certainly interesting that they specify it's weathered in Wales. And using that as a selling point, and maybe we're going to see much more of that. But as we've seen over and over again, it's very difficult to do great weathering. Now, what we've seen from Bachmann, they've really been the kings of the factory applied weathering. They've got that down to such an art that when you buy, for example, the 16-ton mineral wagons, they are perfect. But conversely, I've seen with some of the Daypol wagons, they've kind of ruined things just by blowing over with this muck shade, and they don't look right in a lot of instances. So Hornby, I'm trying to think if I've actually got any ready weathered stuff from Hornby. I'm not entirely sure that I have, but certainly if I buy factory weathered, I will happily buy Bachmann factory weathered, but not Daypol factory weathered. That may change in the future, but it'd be interesting to see what Oxford Rail come through with it factory weathering, and I do hope that they go more towards the Bachmann weathering than anything else. Snowplow accessory available separately, and I'm going to see, can we get? Let me just see. If we go to the Oxford Rail website, was there a picture of that? Oxfordrail.com. Let's have a look. I'm just trying to see if I can find the snowplow. I think it was originally tucked in with the Dean Goods. Well, yeah, there we go. That's the snowplow. It's not a very flattering picture, it has to be said, of the snowplow. That looks a bit weird in a way. From what I gather, you have to remove the buffers on the locomotive to fit the snowplow. It's not one that attracts me, it has to be said. And, I've done videos using 00 scale locomotives in real snow, and I'd certainly give the Biohack snowplow that Hattons are doing, I would have given that a whirl. Similarly, Flangeways did quite a nice snowplow, But the Oxford Rail one for fitting to the Dean goods, I don't know, there's just something very toy-like about the way it looks. I mean, it may just be that the full-sized ones look like that. Angus Trains was that. Jenny, I asked you yesterday, but you didn't answer. What's your favourite steam train? My favourite is the A4. I did answer that. I mentioned the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railways Pug, which is a little 040, primarily dock tank, which for shunting docks in places like Goole and Hull. And I think out of all of the locomotives, that is certainly well up there. But I also like the J11 that Bachmann did. That's just got a really good, aesthetically pleasing look to it. I've got the one that they did in Great Central Railway livery, and I quite like it. It's a really good locomotive, and at the right price, I'd quite happily pick up more of those. I do like the A4s as well. I have a soft spot for them. Back when I was young, my original model railway, which was partially inherited from my father and then built upon, I was always quite taken with the A4s for that, the Hornby 001s, and built up a reasonable collection of them. And when I've started buying the super detail models, I've got one Bachmann A4, Dominion of New Zealand, I think it is. And then I've got about 4 or 5 of the super detail Hornby ones, and they really are good models. And every time I see them at the right price second hand, I just find myself buying them because I really do like them. D827 Kelly, got a dash, dinner is served, better eat it before the dog tries to steal it. Well, hello and goodbye to you, D827 Kelly. I actually do have a model of that class 42. But hopefully you'll pop on back afterwards, but it's great to have you along. John Nutman, what's this I hear that Hornby are bringing out new bullied coaches? This is going back to the Hornby announcements. I've a feeling I would have to go and look, but I think they may have either, are they a reissue or are they I think they might be a reissue, aren't they? Oh no, genre. They bring out the 59-foot 1945 built Bulliard coaches, which use the Monsell 59-foot underframes. Yes, you are right. I think I glossed over them when I did the Hornby live stream. But yeah, certainly Hornby in recent times have become the kings of the coaches. I think in terms of coaching rolling stock, Hornby have really found a dominance in the market, and there's so many good coaches that they bring out, which when you compare to the likes of Bachmann, Bachmann do have some really good stuff in their range. Their Mark 1s were the first proper high quality Mark 1s in my opinion, and their Mark 2s as well, very, very good. But then they had a lot of legacy coaches that kind of tagged along for the ride, which were getting very long in the tooth. They by and large got rid of those from their range, but certainly when it comes to Hornby, we've got the Eleni Artiques are amazing. The Southern Railway coaches, the bow-ended collets, they're all really good. And they brought out their own economy range of Mark 1 coaches, which are actually pretty good as well. And I especially like their range of Pullman coaches. I'm still hoping that they'll bring out the 12-wheeled Pullmans again, because I've yet to complete my set. They sold out quite quickly and have been hard to find subsequently. So I've only got a couple of those. I'd like at least a third one to make up a reasonable train. Let's have a look. Warrington Train Spotter. I like the Mark III coaches that Intercity and ScotRail, Oxford Rail have brought out. Yeah, the Mark III coaches are regarded very, very highly, and it's something that Oxford Rail has been criticised on some things, but applauded with others, and it is definitely the case that the Mark III coaches are one of the highlights of their range. Oh, I'm doing lots of talking here, so I just need to have a quick swig of Coke. Chorley Junction, has anyone produced the Lancashire and Yorkshire birdcage coach? Not as far as I know. Certainly not any of the big players in the market. It may be something that's available in kit form, something like that. But I'm not aware of any of the big players having either announced it or done it in the past. Simplex 1988, evening Jenny, once again in the workshop working on my Scott. Well, hello to you. Good to have you along, and hope that a 5-inch gauge locomotive is coming along well. I know that my father spends a lot of quality time out in the I was going to say shed. It's not a shed he's got. He's actually got a it's a large double garage, but he's got all sorts of equipment out there, and he's probably, even now as we speak, he's got the heater on full blast, and he'll be out there machining bits and pieces for his 4-inch scale Garrett, which is actually the second time he's built a 4-inch Garrett. And I think it's one that he has quite a fondness for the design, so he's gone back and decided to build a second one. The first one he sold quite a long time ago now, when he only likes to have one running at the same time. So once the new one is completed and tested and everything's hunky-dory, he does tend to sell on the previous one. But I suspect, given his health starting to he's not sliding by a lot, but he's certainly starting to feel age creeping up on him. I think this is the probably the last large live steam model that he'll build. But he'll almost certainly build other models. But I think in terms of their weight, it's he's got to be careful with moving these things around, and it weighs something like 3/4 of a ton to a ton. It's a lot of mass in one of those things, and I think it's just started to become a bit too much for the logistics of taking these things to the rally fields. Warrington Train Spotter, is there gin with that Coke? No, I'm still managing to complete dry January. I don't know what date we're on now. I'm just going to see. Come on, computer. Tell me what date it is. We're on the 22nd. Apart from Angus's trains, you're probably in the 23rd by now. So hello from the past. I'm doing pretty well with dry January, it has to be said. And I'm going to stick that out. I'm going to really do okay with that. Andrew Keeley, is gin free January? You'll be able to tell when she's been sipping. Yeah, not half. Especially when you've been a month dry. I think I won't even need to sip it. I'll just open the bottle and smell it, and I'll be drunk. David Stevens, I've got an O-gauge ETS Garrett, love it. Some of these Garretts that you can buy are really nice. There's Hattons do the is it the LMS Garretts? They certainly did. I didn't get one, but certainly they must have been successful because they've completely sold out as far as I can tell. And it'd be interesting to see if they do another run. Angus's Trains has confirmed that it is currently tomorrow on the other side of the world. Well, it's today for you, but it's tomorrow for me. So let me know. 6:18 a.m. Gosh, you're up early. Jonesy Transport Hobbies, Oxford Rail is always finds a lot cheaper for the wagons. Yeah, that's the thing with Oxford Rail, and it's the prices are very keen, and I say this over and over again, that price is very important. A keen price forgives a lot of errors, well, to some extent. And that's kind of where with the, let me just see if I can find Oxford Rail's wagons. They've got a good range built up, and a lot of them actually aren't duplicating stuff that's out from other manufacturers, which is good. I think manufacturers going head to head with things like wagons is probably not really in the best interests for modelers, but certainly is that going to do anything? Hello, wakey. Bit of a slow connection at the moment, and here we go. I think we've had a look across this page before, but I've gone to the Hattons website because, as I've said before, Hattons seem to be very, very good at the layout of the product, so it's very easy to find the things you want. Oxford Rail's website makes Bachmann's new website seem easy to use and informative, so it's easier for me to have a look at some of the things here. But yeah, the wagons, when we look at the prices, I mean, the thing that always catches my eye, we're talking about the Bosch Buster. This is actually the Gladiator. So I think this is the Second World War model. And we've got an RRP. In fact, this is the what Hattons are planning on selling it for, £42.50. I mean, that is incredibly priced. I think we mentioned this yesterday, that if this were a model coming from Bachmann, we'd be looking at, I reckon, a price tag of over £200. So I'm very interested to see what the quality's like when that does finally turn up. But the wagons themselves are generally pretty good. In fact, actually, let's have a look and see. Has Hattons got any of the new items listed? They may or may not have pictures. It's let's have a look. Are we getting any pictures? No. We don't appear to have any of the new releases listed, but so when we look at the prices, we're looking at £11 there for the upcoming 7-plank wagons. When you compare that to around 20 quid for the Bachmann equivalents, you're looking at getting nearly 2 Oxford Rail wagons for every 1 Bachmann. Let's have a look. Angus is trying to always up at 6 a.m. Aha, so you're a mornings person. I used to be a mornings person. Now the bit of the morning that I like the most is the bit that's immediately after midnight. Because of my work patterns, I tend to not get up until about 8 o'clock. But that's only because I can often be at work until 1 in the morning. So it doesn't pay to be up bright and early if you're going to be awake for a long, long time. James Gilbert, hi Jen, on Bulliard coaches, Bachmann claim to be bringing out new ones with 10-inch window vents, but their website doesn't say when. Yeah, we're seeing this more and more, and I think what this boils down to is that Bachmann have had some production issues. One of their factories, unexpectedly, was forced to close down because of redevelopment spurred on by the Chinese government. So it was out of their hands. And what it's meant is that a lot of production schedules have been pushed back. It's kind of why the J39 has been pushed back. The Prestwind Twin Silo wagon has been officially pushed back. And what they've started doing now is not listing projected delivery dates on a lot of the newer things, because time and time again they've not kept to the delivery schedules. I mean, we're still waiting for the van wide that they announced back in about 2002. Still not seen any trace of that. Just looking down, let's have a look. Angus is trying to part of the days of swim training. It was 5:30 a.m. Gosh, you really are a mornings person. Warrington Train Spotter. Daypal are doing quite well with their models. I have 2 Class 68 ScotRail and DRS cars, and quite remarkable models. I know modern stuff's not your thing, but they are great. Yeah, I've heard good things actually. The newer Daypal models are really, really good. They are up to a very, very high standard. And I think that the Daypal philosophy is that when they're doing something new, they're doing it really, really well. The older stuff, the David Boyle era, is a bit toy-like, but the new stuff that's coming out now is really high quality. I've actually got one of their Class 22s that I bought quite a way back. I've done a review of it in the dim and distance past, so you'll have seen it running on some of the train videos. And that is a superb model. I can't say that the Class 22 would have really been an attraction to me, but there was something about the model. It had just a real presence. It was a great model. Jones Transport Hobbies, looking for a cheap railway crane. Where the cheapest to buy at? Well, your best bet would be, if I look here, I'm not endorsed by any manufacturer or retailer, but if we find wagons here, it just happens to be that the Hattons website is particularly easy to find things that you want. So anime PQ, RW, ST, VW. Gosh, it's getting to be quite a long list. I'd say if you want a cheap crane, and you're not too bothered about super duper detail, then I would say Hornby. They do a range of budget breakdown type cranes. So somewhere in here, gosh, it was going to take forever to go through all these. Somewhere in here, you'll find a breakdown crane, and there we go. If I bring this up, there you are. £11. £11 for a fairly basic breakdown crane. I don't think it's particularly based on any prototype, but if you're wanting a crane and price is a big factor, then I'd say something like that. Love your Daypole B4, Andrew Keeley. Yes, certainly. The Daypole B4, it got into my top 5 of the entire year of locomotives from last year. Really, really pleased with that. It's a lovely model, runs well. Pretty easy to DCC chip, it seems. There's a lot of features going on in that really they've pulled out all the stops. I've also got one of the Daypole BT well tanks, the first run that was done for Kerno Model Centre, and that's a really good model as well. I haven't got any of the little Sentinels, the Steam Sentinels, but I believe that they're pretty good too. What other locomotives? I've heard good things about the Class 68. So, as to be said, not my thing in the slightest, but people really are saying good things about them. What else have we got down here? Just having a look. Angus's trains. Jenny, have you heard of the New South Wales C38 Class 3801? Not one I'm familiar with, I have to say. I'm not really familiar at all with much of the locomotive stock in Australia, both past and present. I know that the Victorian State Railways had what looked like Class 8 diesel shunters that were exported from, would have been English Electric, and outwardly they look very similar to the UK Class 8s. South Maitland Railway, I'm familiar with them. They ran an awful lot of Bayer Peacock 282 tank locomotives, and actually, interestingly enough, they were a steam-powered railway right through to, I think it was 1983, quite interesting that in Australia you had commercial steam operated trains right through into the early 1980s. Let's have a look. I like transport. Any modern stuff announced by Oxford Rail? No, I'm really sorry, but there's nothing on this list. It's a very short list. You're seeing it there. What you see is what I've been able to find, and there's nothing announced. That said, well, actually, no, I take that back. The Carillion Land Rover Defender with the rail wheels. That's pretty much the only modern image thing there. Let's have a look. Looking down the list, John Nutman, just a couple of days to go before our exhibition. Can't wait. Well, look, good luck to you. Hope it all goes well. Exhibiting is good fun, it has to be said. Let's have a look. Ned's Trains. Hello to you too. Hunts Heath Model Railway. Good evening to you too. The Victorian railways, and actually a lot of the railways in Australia would buy in locomotives from a lot of the British builders. There's some American ones as well. I think certain locomotives from the Baldwin Locomotive Company in Philadelphia, I think it is. They made it through to Australia, but by and large, Bayer Peacock, Vulcan Foundry, and Andrew Barclay, Robert Stevenson Hawthorne, all of these manufacturers did very well at exporting locomotives to Australia. And as well as that, there's things like the Robinson 8Ks that were bought from the War Department surplus for is it J and A Bowen? I hope I'm getting that right. Just for the coalfield, actually, just immediately adjacent to the South Maitland Railways. Yeah, the SMR used 282 SMR 10 class, which I believe It may be that every single one of that class has survived because the railway was still using steam locomotives through to about 1983. The they lasted long enough to all have survived. So Warrington Train Spotter, parts of Australia have a different version to the Class 43 HST. Ah, yes. Yes, they do. And I believe as well, there was certain either Mark II or Mark III coaches were also exported out to Australia as well. Avishkar Cloud Harry, yeah, I do remember you. Welcome back, and let's have a look through some of the other releases. There's not really anything much else to talk about from Oxford Rail. Again, slim pickings, but I think what we will find is that as the year progresses, Oxford Rail will bring out a lot of re-liveries of various wagons and locomotives, which aren't necessarily part of this big ticket lineup. I think what we've really got here is what effectively they've done is announced the J27, in all honesty with you. Everything else down here looks to be tinkering with existing stuff. We've also got mixed private owner wagon sets. I've seen these as well being advertised. But unlike with the likes of Bachmann or Hornby, the wagon packs appear to be packaged up wagons that are available singly, so you're not getting different you're not getting different running numbers within the sets. You're just getting, hopefully for a slightly more favourable price, a pack of 3 wagons from the range. Let's have a look. Wolfie Wolf, all these lovely locos and wagons, it makes me want to spend, but no matter how far you push the envelope, it will still be stationary. Yeah, I do sympathise, I must admit. It's a very expensive hobby. It's that money's got to be spread thinly, and whichever way you slice it up, the problem is that railway modelling is a luxury. And for a lot of people, you have to take that money to spend on your hobby from what is left over after you've paid to live, paid to eat, paid to for transport, all these sort of things. There's so many things vying for the money. It's something's got to give, and as the prices go up, there's no extra money in the pot. So yeah, it's really, really difficult. Ned's Trains. If any of you live in the area, there's an exhibition at Rainhill Village Hall on the 2nd and 3rd of March. It's run by Rainhill MRC. It's a good exhibition. Yeah, actually, I know the one that one well. They were advertising that when I went to the one-day Rainhill exhibition at the Guide Hut. That was the last outing for Grove Street Yard. So I don't know whether you went to that one. It was a pretty good day actually. And when I was there, they were advertising the 2-day thing. Simplex 1988. Expensive hobby. Try model engineering. Mistakes can become rather expensive. Yes, my father knows all about that. Spending a long, long time machining things to then find that you've machined them ever so slightly wrong. I'm trying to think of actually the biggest boo-boo that he had. He did have a cylinder block for his Alfred Dodman. Now, he wasn't able to machine it because of the way that it had to be machined. He didn't have equipment big enough to do it. So he paid the manufacturers of the bare castings to machine it for him. And they managed to create a flaw which meant that it kept blowing the gasket between the inlet, the steam inlet to the cylinder, and the exhaust. So you'd be running it, and then all of a sudden there'd be a huge bang, and it would evacuate all of the steam pressure straight up the out the exhaust, just like it was like opening a tap into the boiler. And this was eventually the original manufacturer denied any knowledge of this being a problem, but it was eventually proven that it was their fault and not my father's fault. So it didn't turn out to be expensive for him, but you can imagine a cylinder block. You're talking thousands of pounds, so there's a lot of money at stake. He's also he's probably been through an awful lot more phosphor, bronze, and steel than perhaps he would have done had he not made mistakes. But it's one of the things I suppose about it. It's trial and error with a few things. I like transport. And kind of a modern image. Oh right, yes. And this is answer to Carl at Brook. What one area would you like Oxford Rail to improve upon? I think at the moment, because my N7 has become DOA, quality control. I think that perhaps I've got an isolated example, and I hope that when the review goes up tomorrow, I don't come across as being unduly harsh. But you can imagine anybody would be a bit peeved if they come to run their expensive model for the first time and it just splutters and dies. So I might be able to fix it. But certainly quality control in that respect. But then again, there's always people who've got a story about when they bought a Hornby model that didn't work. I bought a Duchess of Abercorn, and every single wheel was gauged slightly too narrow. So it would literally fall between the track. It would go, it would go inside the track. It was that much under gauge. And I looked at it and I thought I could repair it myself very carefully. But I thought, no, I've just spent a lot of money on this. So I sent it back and had a replacement sent out. And, for, I suppose, balance of fairness, Bachmann, I've had my Stevenson Clark pannier tank arrived DOA with a short on the chassis. But they replaced that very, very quickly, no quibbles. So it swings and roundabouts, I suppose. But whereas other manufacturers seem to be getting on top of the flaws, I've just got this model that doesn't work. But what else? Oxford Rail. I think there's certain aspects of their livery application. What I've noticed is only with Oxford Rail really, when they're tempo printing things like the white lettering onto the side of wagons, and I noticed on the N7 as well on the buffer beam, if they're printing a light colour over red, it seems to happen on. The red is bleeding through, so the white looks very pink, the yellow looks very washed through with red, and it seems to be a common problem that Oxford Rail are getting in the tempo printing process. So that's probably the biggest area to improve on. Let's have a look. Their modern image range is bad. They just need to improve their modern range. Certainly, yeah. I mean, really, their modern range consists of the Mark III coaches, I guess. I'm not sure whether there's much else that they do modern image. It has to be said. Let's have a look. Quality control is a big problem in this hobby. Yeah, maybe I've just been lucky with a lot of my more recent stuff. So I don't know. I mean, thinking right back, the old split chassis, they used to be a bit of a nightmare. They had a thing where the wheels on the axles would lose their quartering, and then the chassis would completely bind up because the quartering would go and the side rods would just lock against each other. That used to be a big problem. Wolfie Wolf, I used to be a one-off machinist. I know how much a slip can cost, especially when you're working on an 8-foot casting that has gone through about 4 processes. It can smart a little. Yeah, actually, I must admit, I remember going to a factory where they cut gears. And you can imagine some of these big gears for machinery. You've got a piece of solid steel that's the same diameter as the outside diameter as this gear, and then they sort of machine it up, and then it goes through a machine that cuts the teeth. but you have to get it just right. Otherwise, it is possible to cut a gear where you're going around, you're cutting all the teeth, and then you reach the end, and instead of being a perfect matchup, you end up with one tooth that's slightly bigger than all the others. And of course, it renders the entire gear scrap metal. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong. You can also get things like you could be drilling passageways in an engine block, and the drill bit can quite literally jam and snap off, and then all of a sudden you've got a tungsten carbide drill bit stuck deep inside your casting, and then how are you supposed to get that out? You can't drill into it because you'll just destroy another drill bit. So there's a lot of problems that can come in engineering. Let's have a look. Carlet Brook, fair point. I can do the Mark III as well. Then what about a new MGR? Actually, yeah. Merry-go-round wagons. Normally, when people mention that, what they're usually talking about is the HAA hoppers. They seem to get all the limelight. Well, in terms of that, Hornby have a very good one. Forget about the railroad model. You need the super detail model, and they're not cheap. So you've got to pick it carefully because they still make the railroad model, and they don't really differentiate very easily between the two. But if you get the Hornby Super Detail HAA hopper, it's a really good model. Chorley Junction, off to work. Sees you again later. Well, look, see you. Have a good day at work. Well, good evening at work. Thanks for coming along for this little live stream, and hope to see you again. But yeah, the HEA, Bachmann do a really good model of that, I have to say. And my personal preference is I like the HEA an awful lot. And then you've got your derivatives, things like your HBA, your HSA. They're all variants between what you see outwardly as a HAA or what you see outwardly as a HEA. So I'd have to say that the market's already got some pretty reasonable models in that area. Let's have a look. John Nutman, I only managed to get a Class 40 £80 second hand, which I'm trying to get some more local than I can. Yeah, second-hand prices, unfortunately, do seem to have rocketed up. And I think this has been driven in part by the fact that brand new prices have shot up. And that always tends to drag the second-hand prices up with them. Yeah, I suppose it's understandable. If new prices go through the roof, then there's more people who will buy second hand to make their money go further. And supply and demand, it just pushes the prices up. Angus's trains, the South Maitland Railway 10 and 18 are running, and 30 is undergoing restoration for running on the Richmond Vale Railway. Yeah, they're not all running, but I believe that there's certainly about 14 of them knocking about, isn't there? They're certainly a good survivor. But some of them are either cosmetically restored or others are just sort of awaiting some kind of decision, a bit like the Robinson 8Ks. And it may be the Robinson 8K that's at the Richmond Vale Railway is the one that was provisionally, they sort of did an exploratory dismantling of it to see whether it could be restored. But their conclusion was that actually it was too big a job to restore it, so they cosmetically restored it instead. I Like Transport. Have Dayport announced a new range yet? Not as far as I know, but let's have a look. I have a delivery from the magical hand just off camera of a chocolate bar. Yes, okay, you can go now. And a can of Coke. So special deliveries. And I'm not going to make the mistake I did yesterday of scoffing a chocolate bar whilst talking, because A, you don't want to see like me going, because it's disgusting, and B, you get all these awkward pauses. What was I looking for? Angus Street and the rest of rusting at Richmond Vale Railway all cosmetically restored. I think there's another railway. There's a Richmond Vale Railway and there's a second railway museum in the area. and I can't remember its name. Carlet Brook, thanks for the chat, Jennifer. Great as usual. Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you for popping along and being a part of this. Angus is trying to the Rod 20818 at Richmond Vale Railway. Yeah, I think that's the one that was dismantled to see if it was able to be restored. Turned out it couldn't. And that's the one which you see all the photographs of in the Rod livery, because that's been cosmetically restored. I think probably because at the time that they were seeing whether it could be restored, it were coming up to the centenary of the First World War. So it was obviously an appropriate livery. I believe that there were 13 of the Robinson 8Ks that went to, is it J and A Bowen to work there, but there was never 13 never ran at the same time. There was only, I think the most that were ever running at the same time was 10, and they probably chopped and changed parts between them, so they had at least 3 spares at any one time. Brockwell Lane, toy fairs are worth going to for cheap models. Yes. And you'll have seen my friend Derry in some of the videos. He's a long-term friend of the channel who's been done a lot of support with like finding stuff to film. And his day job is he works in antiques, but that also includes wheeling and dealing with model railway stuff. And if you might remember I think it's the Heljan Class 52 that he got me for a knockdown price was one of his wheeler dealing things. But certainly he says that toy fairs are really worth going to see what you can find. It's always worth a good rummage. Let's have a look. Warrington Train Spotter. HAA hopper wagons were a regular sight on the railway, especially at Warrington, as Fiddler's Ferry Power Station is near, but times have gone, we don't see any now. Yeah, the HAAs, I think the last flow was you're probably looking at nearly 10 years ago now. And the same with the HEA wagons. Now, when I used to live in Durham, I can always remember sitting waiting for my train at Durham railway station and rakes of HEA hoppers rattling through the station. And that was going on until at least 2005. And I also remember it just near Leeds Neville Hill Depot. There was an old goods yard which was just stuffed full of principally HEA wagons waiting to be cut for scrap. Now, there are a number of these different wagons that have been preserved. Shildon, the Shildon Museum, the outreach for the National Railway Museum, does have at least one HEA and at least one HAA. And there are a number preserved elsewhere. Certainly the HAAs, there's a group which is, and it might be something in conjunction with the Class 58 preservation group. They were trying to save and preserve a number of HAA wagons to ensure that they had prototypical wagons that they could run behind it in the future. I'm not clear how many that they've managed to save. I think last time I looked, it was at 3, but it may have gone up since then. And if you add to that the HAA that the National Railway Museum has, there's a very small rake coming together. But it's good to see these things preserved because they're not really seen as the sexy bits and pieces from the railway. So it's very easy that they just disappear without trace, a bit like a lot of older wagons just have done. Oh, that's good. Angus's trains. The Rod 218 is on the station at Richmond Vale Railway as they tried to get it running, but they couldn't do so. Cosmetically restored in black. Yes, I think that's the locomotive that I was thinking of. D827 Kelly back again. Successful defensive dinner from the dog. Yes, I find the best way to defend your dinner from any household pets is to safely contain it within this special area here by eating it. But Dragon Junction. Hi Jennifer, just saying hi and loving the info. Does help a lot, Alan. Well, thank you very much. I think a lot of stuff I know. a little bit about an awful lot, but I'm not really good with in-depth knowledge. So I'm always interested to learn from other people. So if any of you who are listening to this, to watching this, are able to add anything, please, please, please do in the live chat section, because I want to learn as much as anybody else. It's really, really interesting. Some of these little snippets of information. And it's interesting. We've got Angus's trains. We're talking about the locomotives in New South Wales, the Maitland, South Maitland Railway, and at the Richmond Vale Railway Museum. I've been actually reading up on a lot of this comparatively recently, because it was, in particular, it was to do with the Robinson 8K, the ROD locomotives that I was particularly interested in, because of a project that I was working on, and because some of them survived there. That's where a lot of the photographs that I've been coming across come from. So you read upon about them, and through them I found out about the South Maitland Railway. And you know how it is when you start looking at up things on the internet. You follow the links, and before you know it, you're reading about a particularly good recipe for making a homemade tagliatelle, and you don't quite know how you got there. But I ended up reading an awful lot about the South Maitland Railway as well. Brockwell Lane, a lot of HEAs were rebuilt into MEAs as available from Bachmann. Yeah, that's the other thing that happened to a lot of these merry-go-round wagons, is that the bodies were ripped off and they reused the chassis. I think some of the TTA wagons went that way. And also in terms of things like VDA vans, a good amount of those weren't scrapped so much as they were turned into the OTA wood carrying wagons. So they evolve, but it does mean that the previous incarnation of these wagons is no longer around. Wolfie Wolf, a friend will only buy secondhand. He has a neat little box of track in it that folds out. There's a battery so he can test locos. He never leaves the house without it, just in case. Actually, that's quite an interesting idea. One of the things I will say is, if you ever go to places like Worley Model Railway Exhibition, or Alexandra Palace as well is another one that I know they go to, the Model Railway Club, and it's just referred to as the MRC. Oh, excuse me. They're based in London. They're quite a famous and old group. They have a test track that they take to exhibitions, and they set it up. And it will deal with, O gauge, N gauge, S gauge, I believe, is on there. You can run 009, HOE. You can. They used to be able to do 3-rail, but apparently there was so little demand for it, it got de-wired. There's all these different gauges and stuff. And if you buy a locomotive at these model railway exhibitions, you can take it to that stand and they will test run it for you. Which is really, really helpful. But certainly, even if that isn't the case, an awful lot of layout operators are quite amenable. If you ask them nicely, then they will test locomotives for you that you've bought there, just to make sure that they work. So it's, if you don't ask, you don't get. So always worth asking. Angus's trains, the RVR runnings are a little. The 04 called Marjorie on BOB coaches built in the UK. Yeah, they've got one, because it's only a short line, but they are looking to extend it, because the original Richmond Vale Railway, which I think was run by G&A Bowen, it ran through until about 1987 and then was taken up. So it was. It lasted a long time. It was a bit like the Fallowfield Loop line in Manchester. It lasted right through into the late 1980s and then was taken up. And you kind of think that a lot of these railways, if they're dismantled and got rid of, it happened in the 60s or the 70s. It's quite unusual to come across railways that are dismantled and got rid of in as late as the 1980s. They tend to survive if they lasted that long. D827 Kelly, defensive dinner was mainly accomplished by enforcement of her training, which is going well. She got to lick the pie tin after as a reward. Oh, well, that's good, yes. It's always good to get pets trained. I think at one point we had our cat trained to play fetch with rubber bands. But as she's grown older, she keeps looking at it and going, "What? If you wanted it so bad, why'd you throw it away? I'm busy. I'm busy sleeping. Let's have a look. John Lemon, I know what railroad I like. I had to take my Hornby Class 55 back to the shop. Yeah, I think the more I see stories about people getting duds when they're buying new locomotives, the more I think I've probably just been quite lucky with a few things. But it's really knocked me that the Oxford Rail N7 didn't work for me. It just broke down. After I've done this live stream, I'm gonna go back out to the shed, and I'm gonna test. I've got the bare chassis. All on its own, and I've prodded everything and seen what I can do, and I'm going to try and I'm going to try to just run just the chassis on its own so I can see what's going on, and then I can prod the wires and see if I can deduce what's stopping it from running. So D827 Kelly, cats train their humans usually. Yeah, I have to say that's quite right. They say dogs have owners, cats have staff. Andrew Keeley, got to run. Jenny, thanks for the chat. Well, look, thank you for joining us tonight. It's been great to have you along. Angus's trains, it used to be big, but a fire destroyed it, and now they're rebuilding the line. They're restoring a South Maitland Railway 30 for running. Ah, yes. Because there was a big bushfire, which did destroy a lot of stuff. I presume that it effectively burnt out all the sleepers, so they're having to relay the line. Yeah, SMR 30. So that's one of the Bayer Peacock 282 tanks. They're actually a pretty fine looking locomotive, but when I looked online, you can get them ready to run, but they are an eye-watering price. There's a little niche manufacturer in Australia that makes them, and I suspect they'll be HO scale. Wolfie Wolf, it might be worth you getting on making a rolling road, Jenny. Well, actually, Hornby do a rolling road. It looks to be quite a good piece of kit, but I always look at it and I think, I could have a locomotive for that price. I'll have the locomotive, thank you very much, and I'll just test run stuff in the shed. Yeah, a rolling road would probably be useful, but it's like so many things. You always find something you want to spend the money on instead. Yeah, John, no, you're absolutely right. When you buy anything new, and it's not just model railway stuff, you buy anything, it's nice that it just works out of the box. And when you think about it, you buy kettles and toasters, and they just work. So why can't a model railway locomotive do that? I mean, you buy a laptop computer and it works, and that's ever so much more complicated than a model railway locomotive. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of, I know the DJ Models 14XX Auto Tank and the Hunslet Austerities as well. Some of them suffered from a dry solder joint issue on the pickups. I know that when I was at Worley, DJ Models were actually selling a lot of these as seconds. The only problem was they wouldn't quite tell you what was wrong with each model, so it really was playing pot luck. You didn't know whether it actually had a serious flaw or whether it was just something simple, which I thought kind of put a lot of people off. It certainly put me off buying some of the Hunslet Austerities. Angus's trains, it used to run from Richmond to Curry. Oh my word! I'm gonna do a hatchet job. Corridage. No, my mouth is rebelling. I'm not quite sure I can get my teeth around that word. It's probably quite a simple pronunciation, but I wouldn't do it justice. And they know they're running on another branch, and then they will run on that line. It'd be interesting to see if they can relay the entire line eventually. I always like to see preserved lines getting rebuilt. Sleepers are wooden, they burn. Yeah, the problem is railway sleepers burn really well because they're soaked in stuff like creosote, and when they burn good. Have you ever walked an old Trans-Pennine Trail? Some of the old stuff is still there, like falling down signal boxes. Is that on the Warrington Trade Spotter? Is that the Woodhead route, which they only dismantled it. I think it was gone by about 1985, but it was running through until about 81. So yeah, there's I've not walked on it, but I've seen bits and pieces of it from driving past. where I have walked disused railway lines, we've been doing on and off the Clarence Railway in Coxo in Durham, and that there's really not a lot of remnants on it. I think the most I found is you can see a concrete post that used to have a warning about the level crossing, and that's about it. And that wasn't dismantled until late 1980s, very early 1990s. It was certainly shut by about 87. It served a quarry, and there's nothing much to see there. And I did walk part of the Highland Rail. Was it Highland? Actually, no, it might have been the North British Railway branch to Fort Augustus as part of the filming for BLR. We were up there, and I actually found a railway chair, one of the fittings that the rail sits on and then mounted onto the sleeper. I actually found one of them in the cess. But unfortunately, because of logistics and stuff, I couldn't do anything with it. I really wanted to bring it back for the collection in the garden because it was a genuine, I can't remember whether it was Highland Railway or North British Railway rail chair, but it was just no option to do that. So let's have a look. Train Sporting Southeast. Hello, sorry, watching Grand Tour. No, don't apologise. I haven't actually watched the Grand Tour, but I presume it's just like Top Gear Challenge per every episode. Just Top Gear 2, basically. I mean, Top Gear died when they left. I think, I don't condone what Clarkson did, but I think the BBC very much shot themselves in the foot because Top Gear was a license to print money for them, and they just wee-weed it up against the wall. Let's have a look. Angus's trains. If you come to Australia and New South Wales, are you going to visit the RVR and New South Wales Railway Museum? Yeah, certainly would. There's quite a few places that I'd like to come and visit. Puffing Billy Railway as well, because I remember there was I can't remember what it was called, but there was a TV series I remember when I was a kid that was filmed on the Puffing Billy Railway, and I remember there's a locomotive called Wombat, and it was about the sort of trying to reopen this narrow gauge railway in Australia. And this evil trucking company, the boss of that was trying to thwart them. I can't remember what it was called. But certainly it got shown in the UK and thoroughly enjoyed it. If I go and have a good fight through Wikipedia and Google, I'd probably find it. But I'd love to see it again, actually. Let's have a look. Angus Trains, the New South Wales Railway Museum runs from Picton to Thermire to Coraga to Buxton. Yeah, but because Australia is such a vast country. I think Great Britain would fit neatly into a little tiny corner. So much more space. When you've got more space, you can have these longer things because the land doesn't tend to get reused as much. Here in the UK, house builders and road builders turn up practically whilst the ground's still warm from the railway having been there, and a lot of the land just gets reused. Philip Page, totally agree on Top Gear. Yeah, BBC shot themselves in the foot. I don't condone what Clarkson did, but the way that they handled it, they just, talk about cutting your nose off to spite your face. Transporting Southeast, I'm getting maxi track 7.25 inch gauge diesels. I presume that you meant that's diesels. Yeah, a 7.25 inch gauge. That really is quite big. That says ground level ride on sort of stuff. So Angus's trains. Remember the Top Gear camper vans on Grand Central, on the Great Central Railway? Yeah, Top Gear made its own railway company. Yeah, I remember that. Using caravans mounted on permanent way trolley chassis. Yeah, an interesting episode. But I think my favourite Top Gear episodes. I love it when they do the real grand journeys, like when they tried to drive to the North Pole, when they went and did Vietnam on the little putt motorbikes, and What was the other one that they did? Oh, the African adventure was really good. They drove across Botswana and places like that. That was really good. I like transport. Why won't my messages send? It's sent okay. It's coming through. You're coming through loud and clear. Transporting southeast. Well, it fits my garage. You must have a big garage, actually. Well, it would fit in the garage, but you wouldn't run very far if you were sticking to within the confines of the garage, I have to say. It's something my dad's found with his Garrett, his 4-inch scale Garrett. So it's 1/3 the size of the real thing. It takes up an awful lot of a garage. You certainly, I think at one point in the past, at various points, he's had 2 of these things in there where he's building a new one but still has the previous one that's doing rallies and stuff, and they just fill one half of the garage. They are really, really big. D827 Kelly, they did a lot of damage to stock and locomotives on the Great Central, caused a bit of friction amongst the volunteers there. Yes, I heard that when they did that, staged that collision, it did do some damage to the locomotive. Let's have a look. Philip Page, Freddie Flintoff, and Paddy McGuinness will finish Top Gear off altogether. Yeah, I must have, I've just stopped bothering with Top Gear. Chris Evans turns me off, and I just find him very irritating. I'm sure he is a lovely, lovely person to meet and talk to and hang out with. But ever since he took over the Radio 1 breakfast show, I think he took over from Zoe Ball on the Radio 1 breakfast show, that for me was the point that I stopped listening to Radio 1 as my primary radio station. I just found him deeply arrogant, opinionated, and tacky, and all the things you don't want from a radio disc jockey. And, when he turned up on Top Gear, it was like that over again. He's just not a good presenter. He's a very good producer, but not a good presenter, and that really showed. D827 Kelly. Matt LeBlanc was much better than Chris Evans. Yeah, actually, Matt LeBlanc, he's always pretty. It's basically Joey from Friends, but he's quite laid back, and I just like to style. In fact, if you haven't seen it already, find the American version of Top Gear. And what Top Gear actually had is they had overseas franchises, and they had there's a Russian Top Gear that I've seen, there's an American Top Gear, and I've also seen the Australian Top Gear. Now the other franchises didn't really gel for me, and they didn't last. But the American Top Gear did run for a few series, and the 3 presenters that they got there had the same kind of dynamic as May, Hammond, and Clarkson. And I think that if they got anybody, what they should have done is got the presenters from the US Top Gear and actually made that the main Top Gear, because they were good. They really were good, and they gelled together as a group. Simplex 1988. Surely someone could do a similar thing to Top Gear, but for railways, full gear. It's an interesting thought, and I am aware of various ideas that have been mooted over the last couple of years, but it wouldn't be so much Top Gear itself, but more like the Top Gear cheap car challenge aspect of Top Gear. And the problem is it's just so unwieldy. But there are things being developed, is probably all I can say about that. Whether they see the light of day, low probability, but it might be done. I suppose the closest you're going to get is Scrap Heap Challenge did an episode where 3 teams were trying to build their own railway locomotive. And it was all a bit far-fetched. They built them on, I think, Mark III coach bogies or something. And it was very, very staged. You had an electric-powered one using, I think, the motor out of a milk float. There was a diesel-powered one using an old farm tractor. And then there was a steam-powered one, because they just happened to find a steam boiler and an engine in the scrap heap. Top Top Gear really works with cars because of the unpredictability of it, because people can relate to cars more because more people have a car than their own personal train, I suppose. Brockwell Lane, why no new manor from any manufacturer or Class 91 for that matter? I couldn't tell you. I don't know exactly how their process is for deciding what to make. I'm guessing a lot is to do with what they see as being a potential market. That said, occasionally you get things like the Gladiator railgun that Oxford Rail have produced. So just bringing that up again, and this is very niche, and yet I think it's going to sell. If you get something that's really off the wall, so like a Class 89 might sell because it's so unique and unusual. A Fell diesel may actually turn out to be a big seller because of its weirdness. But Class 91s, I think they had a limited geographical range in that they just worked on the East Coast Main Line, generally speaking, just trundling rakes of Mark IVs between places like Edinburgh and London. And, I've travelled many miles on such things, but I don't know, maybe they just think that it's too niche. I don't know. In terms of new manor, you get into the realms with some things where the problem is that some models, if they've already been tooled at some point in the more recent past, and the manor Bachmann has had in their range more recently, a lot of manufacturers have to weigh up whether a lot of people would choose to stick with the older model, buying it secondhand or not upgrading what they've already got. In effect, the market already has a degree of saturation. So what you would find is that may be a decision as to why there's no new manor class being announced. Of course, though, sometimes you get a situation where an older model is seen as being fair game, and you get this whole debacle with the Terrier locomotives, where Daypole stroke Rails launch in with their new up-to-date model, and then Hornby goes, actually, we're going to retool it anyway. And you end up with this head-to-head going on. But that's because the Terrier has such a big following. It's a long-lasted locomotive with a lot of pretty liveries. So, the fact that there's been a model on the market for about 25 years between Daypole, the original Daypole model, which then passed to Hornby. So there's pretty much every member of the class and every livery that it's carried has been produced over that time. It's seen that there's still a market for the upgraded version. Let's have a look. Angus's train. The train that was damaged was Peak 45 and some Mark 1 in Blood and Custard. I hope there was no passenger damage to the train. No, there wouldn't have been if that's the one at the Great Central Railway. I think it was a lot of it was buffer beam damage, and I think the problem was not so much impacting the caravan as impacting the frame that it was mounted on. At the end of the day, it's something I've got experience of working with TV crews to some degree. And quite often, sometimes they have no understanding of what you can and can't do with things. So I've given this example before, but I remember doing some filming with Granada and, what was it? Talbot. I've completely forgotten this. Fred Talbot. And that was with my father's very first Garrett back in about 2000, something like that. And my dad's Garrett was in steam because we kind of twigged like they're going to want it running. Everybody else was like going, oh, look at all this free food with the craft services kind of stuff. And because ours was in steam, you could drive it. But the producer was saying to the people like, oh, well, if you could just start that up and just move it over there, that would be brilliant. Just, start it up and drive it around. And people were like, well, it takes hours to steam these things up. And the TV people just did not quite understand what you could and couldn't do with them. And so the reason that we ended up teaching Fred Talbot to drive these things and filming most of the stuff with my father's Garrett was because we'd had the foresight to steam the thing up from the moment we got there. Let's have a look. Philip Page, Jensen Button would have been great. Possibly, actually. I don't know about racing drivers. Some of them can be a bundle of laughs. Some of them not so much. I'm not convinced that that having an actual racing driver would have been a great move. That said, I've just sung the praises of Top Gear USA's team, and one of them was a race car driver. So yeah, if you get the right one. I'm not sure about Jensen Button. I haven't seen him do any presenting. But I want to say Graham Hill. His son, Graham Hill's son. Oh, what's his name? Damon Hill. Damon Hill got there in the end. He does a lot of commentary work now. Oh, and did the commentary for years and years. Yeah. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Former racing driver, now the big commentator on F1. His name has just completely escaped him. I'm hoping somebody's typing quick now. Come on, type. Tell me. As soon as you say, I'm going to be like, oh yeah. What's his name? The presenter, the commentator, Formula One, former race car driver, Martin Brundle. There we go. Yes, Martin Brundle. That's the one. I think Martin Brundle might be quite good at it because he's had the experience of the presenting. And that's what you've got to think about. Doing the TV presenting is probably the harder part. And somebody who's got practice at doing that, experience at doing that, and is also maybe a natural to doing that is what you want. And certainly, Nigel Mansell just didn't. Whenever he was interviewed, he was boring as anything. SCR 1981. They should just let the Stig do Top Gear. I don't know, probably just drive around listening to the Archers on the stereo of the car whilst ragging it round a course. He wouldn't be very talkative as a presenter. He'd just sort of stand there and stare at people. Eddie Irvine definitely isn't. Yeah, Eddie Irvine doesn't. His bedside manner is somewhat lacking. I actually remember, I think it's the 1996 Monaco Grand Prix. He ended up pretty much having a punch-up because somebody ran into him, I think about 2 laps before the end, crippling his car. And they're practically having a punch-up over it. I mean, if there's any Grand Prix, actually, which I like watching as better than anything else, the 1996 Monaco Grand Prix, which incidentally I think was one of the first that Martin Brundle was a co-commentator on. So you can see how far he's come. He sounds a bit nervous in the commentary for that. It's him and Murray Walker. Yes, Sabina Schmidt was always a bit amusing and a bit of a nutter. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Angus's train. Sorry, I do ramble like this. So if you're not into Formula One racing and Top Gear, it's like boring as anything. It's like listening to paint dry. So let's get back. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Oxford Rail. I think as a company, they've got plenty of promise. The Gladiator stroke Bosch Buster Railgun has so much potential. The Dean Goods, I think a lot of people, this was a model going head to head with the old Hornby model. I think it was an ex-Airfix model. It was ripe for an upgrade, that has to be said. But I've yet to get myself the Oxford Rail Dean Goods, and I think a lot of people's opinions were that it was better than the old Hornby model, but not by as much as should have been expected. So I think one of the areas is this bit here at the bottom of the firebox. I remember there was a lot of discussion when this was being developed about them getting that wrong, and there was a feeling at the time that they weren't taking on a lot of the feedback that people were giving them, and instead were kind of bludgeoning on with the design. So I've yet to pick up one of these Dean Goods. The price is very keen, and we've said this before, that a keener price, brand new, does go some way to forgive some faults. So I also need to work out actually which one of the Dean goods is suitable for the pre-grouping period. Now they have announced the Rail Operating Division one, which is suitable for pre-grouping, but yeah, if you're modelling war-torn France, yes. But in terms of the home railways, I've got to work out which, if any, of the Oxford Rail Great Western liveries is actually pre-1923. And it's one of the big niggles that I have with Great Western, because the Great Western was the only railway company that it survived the grouping by having extra companies absorbed by it rather than being amalgamated into a new company. So being able to identify pre and post Great Western Railway, so pre and post 1923 Great Western Railway liveries is an art which I've yet to get to the bottom of. So there's some locomotives, for example, from Hornby, the 282 Mikado tank locomotive. Theoretically, that locomotive is suitable for pre-1923 running, I believe. Is it? No, not the 282. That was a rebuild. The 42XX, some of them are suitable for pre-1923 running. But I don't know whether any of the liveries that Hornby have actually yet released it in are suitable for that period. I don't think they are. But I stand to be corrected. And similarly, did the Great Western actually change their liveries much? There would be no reason for them to repaint everything en masse in 1923 because they were still the Great Western Railway. And I suppose they would have concentrated on repainting things like the Cambrian Railway's locomotives that they amalgamated into the Great Western Railway. So, it may be that some of the early grouping period Great Western liveries are actually the same as the pre-grouping Great Western Railway liveries. But certainly if you go far enough back, then they had like weird ornate crests on the tender. I've got the Bachmann City class in a sort of 1900s livery, and it's very clearly different. But yeah, we've got a D827 Kelly, much more polished brass, pre-1923. I guess you're right. So there is a version of the Dean goods. Let's see if we can find. Let's have a look. Steam locomotives. I'm going to PQRS. Steam locomotives. Oxford Rail. There we are. I'll see what they've got actually. Let's see if they do a pre-1923 suitable model. But I think you're right actually about the polished brass. Because the Southeastern and Chatham Railway liveried locos, the fully lined out ones, they certainly have a nice polished brass look. I'm looking here. This is a second-hand one, I think. Yeah, they've got this second-hand, but I'm guessing that this is the pre-1923 livery. I don't know. That would be my reading of it. Although the Great and then the Crest and Western, I always thought that was a 1930s livery. Although then again, was that not the shirt button, the GWR and the little circular sort of button logo? It's all very, very... Great Western Railway liveries I've never got my head round. So, yeah. Brockwell Lane, yes, that's correct. Brilliant. So basically that's what I'm looking for, is one of these particular versions of the Dean's goods. D827 Kelly, polished brass gradually got less and less after World War One. Yeah, because it was quite intensive to keep it polished. The other thing as well that they found was that, imagine yourself on a bright sunny day, glaring sunshine. The last thing you want as the driver and fireman is looking out through those little portholes at the front of the cab, and you've got this glare from the sun off that dome. So in terms of visibility as well, I know that the SECRC class had their domes painted out into ordinary body colour because of complaints from the crews that the glints in the sunshine were causing visibility issues. Hello to you too, John85. Nice to have you along. Always good to having people coming along and joining in, and feel free to share information as well. We've got there Brockwell Line shirt button 1930 to 45-ish. Yeah, it's something that I need to actually work out definitively the different Great Western styles, because the Great Western Railway persisted through the grouping, it can be a bit of a minefield. John 85, how am I? Yeah, I'm pretty good, thank you. Doing a lot of talking, as is always, so I'm just going to take a slurp of Coke. I like transport. Please listen to my messages about Class 175s. Oh yeah, I think you asked about, I want someone to produce a Class 175. I have a feeling that the Class 175... Was that not done by Bachmann? But it's like a really old model, or am I thinking of the Class 168? I'm just seeing if anything at all. Oh, apparently advanced search doesn't work. Okay. Where Bachmann got rid of their. Oh no, there we go. Class 175. Let's have a quick look. No, there's not really. If I just do 175, sometimes the search function on the Hatton's website is a little bit, yeah. Oh, Class 170. Right, there we are. I like transport. Class 170 is what I was thinking about. And the Class 165, yeah. The more modern units, I'm not so much au fait with, but certainly there are still quite a few of these second generation units that haven't been made. I think your best bet with that is probably Bachmann. They do seem to go in for that a lot, but I don't know. I think with the way prices are going, it's going to be quite tricky, because we've seen the Class 411 crest out at above £400. John 85, where are you from? I'm from Bolton, which is just north of Manchester. D827 Kelly, the London and South Western Railway, if I remember correctly, started painting out brass around the start of World War One to save costs and manpower demands. Yeah, definitely. I think the cleaning was a big thing, visibility as well. So a combination of the two, it just made sense to paint them out. John 85, please speak low, because I'm not speak English very well. I have a slight speech impediment, which makes me sometimes stumble across words, so I'll try and be as clear in speaking as I can. But I'm sorry, I just struggle a bit with getting my mouth around certain words. Let's have a look. I like transport. I like modern units and modern diesels and modern electrics. I also like old stuff, but I prefer modern. Yeah, some people are like that. Now, Brian, who we featured on a Through the Railway Room Door video. In fact, we've done 2 so far, and I can tell you now that Friday's video will be the final part in that visit, looking at all of the sound-fitted stuff that he's got. And I know he hasn't really built much of his layout. He was in the process of packing everything up ready to move, so it's one of the reasons that he's held off actually building the model itself, is because there's no point in starting the build and then having to move. But the third part of that visit is on Friday. If you're a Patreon, you should be getting that a couple of days early. So it's one of the perks of being on Patreon. At any rate, you get you don't have to put in a lot or anything. It's from the lowest possible rate. You get early access to the Friday videos. John 85, I'm Italian from Milan. Well, welcome along. Lovely part of the world. Certainly somewhere I've never visited, but it's the northern end of Italy, isn't it? So I like transport. Oh yeah, the Class 175, Arriva Wales, currently with Transport for Wales. Yeah. D827 Kelly, we may one day see a 175, but I don't expect anyone other than Bachmann to do the 175. Unit pricing has got silly now. Yeah, amen to that. If we go back to let's have a look. whether this search will actually bring it up. Let's leave it to do its special thing. I can see actually outside it's snowing quite heavily. Let's have a look. Somebody did say something about the full SECR lining. It's just gone off the top for me, and for some reason my scroll doesn't work. So, Wolfie Wolf, thank you for the chat, Jenny. Please give my regards to Zoe. I have a date with Fallout 76, so I must dash. Well, look, you take care, and it's been good to have you along, and perhaps see you later. I'm afraid as the favourite Southeastern and Chatham Railway engine. Well, I've got a soft spot for the C-Class because that was pretty much the first that came out in the fully lined out livery. But in terms of newer ones that have come out, I really like the P-Class. I think it's a dinky little thing, and I just love the model from Hatton's. Very, very close behind it, the H-Class, the Wainwright H-Class from Hornby. Angus's trains. Jenny, it's snowing where you are and sunny where I am. Yeah, well, yes, we're in the winter up here, but I believe you're in your summer down there. Because of the way that the Earth tilts, effectively, you're getting the summer weather that we will be getting in a few months' time. Scott Cameron, doesn't snow here in Florida. No, but you get a thunderstorm pretty much every day that you can set your clocks by. I remember when I was staying in Orlando and then latterly in Tampa, you could set your watch by the thunderstorms that rocked in every single day. It was quite unreal. And the rain would bang down unbelievably hard. And then within 5 minutes, it would clear up, bright sunshine, and everything would steam, and it would be back to where it was. Aaron Izzard, hi Jenny, how are things? Yeah, my mouse craps out with the scroll wheel too sometimes. Yeah, it's if I hold it up, that's the mouse. It's gonna have a real tantrum now for me lifting it up, but it's a Mac mouse, and they're a bit annoying. Let's have a look. D827 Kelly, I got given a 411 in blue grey for free, which was a surprise given the current prices, though it needs some TLC and replacement wheels. That's actually a pretty good score. I got my class 411 by I bought it second hand from a cash converter, funnily enough, of all places, and I was alerted to the fact that it was there. God knows how it turned up there. It's just not the sort of places that model railway stuff really normally turns up. It was mint in box, asked no questions, told no lies. And I think I paid about, it was either £65 or £70. Angus's trains. Jenny, I have a speech impediment. A lot of people do. I have to say that I'm a lot better than I was. One of the things that doing radio actually taught me to do was to be able to speak properly. I used to mumble, slur words, real troubles with pronunciation. And I suppose as practice makes perfect. I've been through speech therapy and all sorts, and I'm going to be 40 in a couple of months. So I've sort of come out the other side. So Brockwell Lane, Arcadia must be your local model shop then. No, technically Bolton Model Mart is the closest model shop to here. And then there's also the Holton Model Centre in Bolton. And then there's one at Besser the Barnes. Oh, I forget its name. Which is just off junction 17 of the M60, and then you get to Arcadia. I go to Arcadia a lot because the office, my work office, is in Rochdale, so I can nip there in my lunch hour type thing. Angus's trains, what did John just say? I don't know. He's Italian apparently, so I'm not sure. D827 Kelly, I have half of 411 as well, missing centre cars. We'll source the centre cars at some point or convert Bachmann Mark 1s. Yeah, excuse me. It's interesting actually. We're coming to what I wanted to actually show is Actually, they've not quite gone over 400, but this is the class 411. The new version, look at the price, £382.46. And as I said to you before, oh, just ignore him. He's being an attention seeker. We've got ourselves a troll. What I've said before is that if you shop around, some of the the actual low volume model shops, the ones that don't necessarily sell on the internet, are highlighted. Holton Model Centre have the plain green A suffix class 411. They've got them brand new for 133. So I find it hard to believe that Bachmann are going to be selling many of these C suffix ones at this sort of price. Really, you have to be a hard and fast class 411 fan wanting a fourth set with a different number to really pay that kind of money. So if we go back, even Hatton's, and again, as I always say to people, I'm not affiliated with Hatton's, not affiliated with any other retailer or manufacturer. It's just that they've got a really good website for showing all of these things. They've got the B suffix, the A suffix, and if I look back ahead, the original suffix. They have got all of the previous ones for sale second hand, and you're looking at £130, £134, £124, £120, £129. Second hand, they're there. Right, let's have a look. Right, Aaron Izzard, also random question, you don't have to answer, but what do you think of the really old gauges, like gauge 1, 2, and 3? I think that the larger gauges are coming back into vogue now, it has to be said. O gauge used to be one of those sort of gauges. It was very specialist. You tended to have to kit build things if you were working in that scale, much as you would have to in some of these larger scales now. But O gauge came back into vogue pretty much when Heljan, Bachmann with their Brassworks and Daypol started bringing out excellent ready-to-run models. And in the case of Daypol, at really good prices. Gauge 1 does have some degree of ready-to-run support. I've seen wagons in Gauge 1 starting to turn up ready to run. And again, the prices are pretty keen. So, they've got a real presence. The bigger you get, the more presence they have. I'm using O gauge for the garden railway because it just, I'm really getting into that gauge. But I think as time goes on, there'll be a greater support for the larger gauges, and also being able to 3D print models. You can just download a file and it will allow you to just simply print your model, and then all you got to really do is paint it. And I'm guessing that given time, 3D printing will get to the point where it'll just be like a Star Trek replicator. You just boom, there it is, and it'll come out ready, like coloured and painted and everything. Yeah, if somebody knows how to boot somebody from the live chat, then it would be helpful to let me know. Angus's trains. Jenny, have you been to North Yorkshire Moors Railway? Yes, I have. I've definitely been there quite a few times because my late grandmother lived in Cottingham near Hull, so she used to take me there on day trips quite a lot. But we're talking about 1980s was the last time I went there. Let's have a look. Bachmann have gone crazy with the prices. Yeah, definitely they have. There's no war in Italy. Just if somebody knows how to ban somebody from a live chat, then do let me know. I'm new to this. If you want to boot them, block them. Does anybody just give me aha? There we are. They've gone. I think. I think, yeah. You shouldn't be seeing their messages anymore. Would be my guess. So if anybody, yeah, good move. To be honest, it's just a troll. It's we had one yesterday who seemed more concerned about about my boobs, which really just tells you the tone of some of these people. So yeah, no problem. Sorry, I'm new to this, so I'm just trying to work out. Now I know how to boot people. Be careful. I know how to boot. Um, yeah, I agree with what you said. Some of these prices are a little bit steep. Question: do any of these sets come with track? The Class 411 does not come with track. It comes in a pretty big box, I have to say, but all you get is effectively the four coaches of the train. If you want a set, Hornby tend to be the ones that do full sets a lot more. But in terms of sets from Bachmann, there's a few. I think Midnight Metropolitan might come with track. Let's have a look. Sets. Will there be a listing for sets? 11 PQRS sets is sets. I'm not sure where they'd be listed, but if I let me just I hate this mouse. I really do. Let's try Midnight Metropolitan. Oh, that's ice cream. Metropolitan. Oh, it's just. Yeah, there's no new Bachmann. Oh, my spelling's atrocious. I'm not sure how you say it. So Bachmann have released some sets in the past. No new sets have been announced, but in all honesty, you can get the track fairly cheaply. So, and the controllers as well. Check eBay. The actual controllers from the sets can be had for. I think I bought one from a Bachmann set for a £5. Brand new, never used. It was just split from a set. Somebody bought the set for the locomotive and wagons, didn't want the rest of it, so I got it for a £5. Yeah, Metropolitan. Yeah, is that what I actually typed? Metropolitan. Yeah, it's the search function on on Hatton's website's not so great. Yeah, D87 Kelly, dirt cheap on eBay usually. Yeah. If you want to get controllers, cheap controllers or cheap track, eBay's probably the best place. Brockwell Lane, think Bachmann have just moved factories in China, still setting up maybe. Yeah, I touched on this actually with the Bachmann announcements live stream. What's happened is, I think Bachmann had 3 factories that were all making the different things. Now, they knew that one of their factories, they were going to have to move it because the factory was slated for demolition and the site redeveloping, something to do with what the Chinese government were doing to regenerate areas and develop things. What happened was that they got notice to clear out the factory earlier than anticipated and within a very short time frame. So not only did they lose the production from a factory, but they had to draw other staff from the other 2 factories to assist in the moving of equipment, tooling, that kind of thing, out of that factory because they only had a very short time limit to do it. So that is the reason why Bachmann are struggling with the production. There's no financial problems, nothing like that. It's just simply a logistical thing. So I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, Cada is the main company, and that's like the parent company. They also own all sorts of things. So the Bachmann brand worldwide is Cada Industries, but they also make other things. I believe that they do their big thing is plastic injection molding. So they make an awful lot of other things that have nothing to do with hobbies and model railways. I have a feeling that Cada used to do the plastic hair rollers that you see in all these pictures of women in the 1950s with their hair in rollers. I believe that one of the products that Cada certainly used to make are those plastic hair rollers. Aaron Izzard, glory to the LMS. If you say so. in terms of favourite railway company, and I don't think anybody specifically asked that, but favourite railway company, I guess I have a soft spot for the Lancashire and Yorkshire, but also the South Eastern and Chatham. And the South Eastern and Chatham, I think, is only because they have such pretty locomotives and liveries. The LMS, I'm fairly and squarely in LMS country here. The local station, it was LMS. Prior to that, it was Lancashire and Yorkshire. Although actually, the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway was bought out by it amalgamated with the Midland Railway in 1922. So it would have technically been the Midland Railway for a single year. Warrington Train Spotter 2778. Thank goodness you managed to get rid of the troll. Yeah, I'm glad as well. I was getting a bit worried actually at one point because I wasn't quite sure how to block people, but we worked it out in the end. Aaron Izzard. Okay, I'll give you a pretty good looking locos. Yeah, I think in terms of liveries, the South Eastern and Chatham Railway were pretty good. London Brighton and South Coast Railway were pretty fancy too. Some of the London and North Western Railway Express locos were pretty interesting. But then when you get up into Scotland, the Highland Railway with like the Jones goods and I think it was like a light brown colour. Some of them are quite eye-catching. The Caledonian Railway. Southern Railway is my favourite generally, as well as the Underground. Yeah, I've got a soft spot for the Southern Railway, the olive green stuff. And I think I've touched upon this in a previous live chat. I think that the thing about Southern that made me attracted to it was because when my father and I collected Hornby 00, the Southern Railway stuff was really hard to get, and it used to go for a lot of money. So it was quite an achievement to find Southern Railway stuff. So I think that's why I get attracted to the Southern Railway stuff. Warrington Train Spotter 2778. There's a troll in the group yesterday, and he's being pretty rude. I must admit there was. I tried to ignore him yesterday. It turned up right at the end. I did ask him to behave himself, but because it was right at the end, I didn't get to learn my leet banning skills. Angus is trying. I'm glad because I blocked him from my channel, and I would block him for you, but I can't. Yeah. So has he been and hassled you as well? Yeah, I think probably the best thing to do is, if you haven't already done so, report him to. I think it'd probably be to YouTube, and I suppose eventually, if enough people report them, they'll have their account blocked. Brockwell Lane. We're all going to feel awful if the news tells us of a war in Italy tonight. Well, there's a way of checking that. bbc.co.uk. Let's check if there's a war in Italy. So we can. Here we are. No, I don't think there's a war in Italy. So I think we're good. Let's have a look. Most read. No. Patisserie Valerie has fallen into administration, but there's definitely no war in Italy. So we're grand. We're grand. Right. Anyway, where we're yes. Meanwhile, back at the ranch. Yeah, just hear that. Thank you very much, Angus's Trains. Brilliant. And the more I do these live streams, I think the quicker I will be at getting rid of them. Also, if anybody is worried about if somebody's hassling you, if you feel that somebody's being unnecessarily rude, anything like that, do let me know, because I can, I noticed when I found the menu for blocking people, you can put them in a timeout and all sorts. There's a few different options, so don't suffer in silence. Let me know if somebody's causing a problem. And I don't know, there may be a thing whereby people can send private messages. So if somebody's bugging you via private messages, let me know. I can try and do something. Yes. Let's have a look. Right. let's have a look. Philip Page, I love Southern. Reminds me of holidays on the Isle of Wight. Yeah, actually, the Isle of Wight's a curious place because latterly it ended up as part of the Southern Railway, but there's actually quite a few railway companies on the Isle of Wight. Which they had their own, even during the southern days, the Isle of Wight locomotives had their own numbering system. So, like the Terriers ended up with completely different number series when they went over to the island. In a way, it's a shame that the Isle of Wight Steam Railway were unable to preserve more of the network. I know that they started out at not Ventnor. What's the other place? Not Ryde. Where they started, they were forced to evict. They were evicted from because the local council wanted to build a road or redevelop. And back in the 60s, early 70s, railways were considered uncool by officialdom. And I think it's the case that they actually ran their stock through to their present bit of line over the still intact rail network before it was ripped up. Angus is strange. Jenny, thanks for the stream. I'm enjoying it. Thank you very much for watching. It's great to have everybody along. Excuse me, Newport, that's the one. Yeah, definitely. Completely agree with you there. Warrington Train Spotter 2778. Now that I know how to block people, I'll be a little bit quicker on that. So really sorry I didn't get on top of it quicker. Let's have a look. Yeah, Isle of Wight named their engines too. Didn't know that actually. But let's have a look. D827 Kelly. Sorry, I was just distracted by. I think it's next door actually. If you hear weird sort of voices, it's not Zoe. But it's the people who are behind the monitor. The wall has been sound deadened, but not soundproofed completely, because the trouble is, to soundproof something, you need bulk. You need a thickness of material, and that of course impinges into the space in your room. So I've used sound deadening, which has made them sound further away, but it hasn't got rid of the noise completely. Right, let's have a look. Paula Curling, when will Hornby make a better turntable? I think they're about the only. Actually, no. I think Heljan make a turntable, but yeah, the Hornby turntable. I think what you've got to remember is that the Hornby turntable is a product from, I think, the 1970s, if not the 1970s, then the 1980s. It was originally envisaged as being a bit of a toy, and it's staying in the range because people buy it. And I think that if you want a turntable just to be a feature to give added value to your model railway, then yeah, it's probably still fine. But it has a lot of shortcomings because it's surface mounted. And it's not really a lot like any real turntable. You can get a kit from, I think it's Pico, but you need to cut a hole in your baseboard to mount it, which for a lot of people, that's a lot of work, and it's tricky. But apparently it does make quite a good model when you do it. Yeah, Pico turntables are quite good. Heljan one is not readily available and quite expensive. Yeah, that's the problem I've had a lot with Heljan, is that they do tend to be quite expensive. And certainly an O gauge as well. It's very telling, the price differential between the Heljan O gauge and the Daypol O gauge. Daypol they've kind of done the Oxford Rail thing, in that they've gone in at a really good price bracket. In fact, I'm just let's have O gauge locomotives. Now, it's actually snowing really heavily. It's like almost gone to a whiteout on the cameras. Let's have a look. Steam locos, Daypol. I really do like these models, and yeah, Oh yeah, the working gantry cranes. Yeah, they I think they only made a few hundred of the gantry cranes, and they were expensive, but they sold out. And they, as far as I'm aware, they haven't done another production run, which is a pain in the neck if you're looking for something like that, because um, you know, where are you going to get one apart from second hand? And they're really expensive. Yeah, I like transport. Apparently, Dapol O gauge Class 8s are nice. Yeah, I keep meaning to buy one. And it's always the case. I go there to buy a Class 8, and then they're like, oh, shiny, shiny, come get your shiny. And I end up coming away with something like a Terrier or something like that. But I'm looking here. This is one that actually I bought in the Hatton sale. Again, not affiliated with Hatton's, just a happy customer, and also they've got a really good website. You know, hats off to Hatton's. Your website is one of the best in the retail trade. In fact, it's so good that I go to the Hatton's website rather than the Bachmann website, because the Bachmann website is not really very user friendly. But I bought one of these that you're seeing on your screen now in the fire sale before Christmas, and I don't know if anybody you follow me on Instagram or Twitter. I've posted up a photograph of this very locomotive in the snow. Now, earlier on, the snow wasn't very deep. We had a flurry, then the sun came out, so I got a really nice picture of this. So if you go and check out my Twitter or my Instagram feed, you'll see it there. But that's what I ended at. Yeah, I like transport. Totally agree with you. I don't like the Bachmann website. The old Bachmann website was really good. Even down to they had a page where it was past items, and they had a spreadsheet you could download. I think it was like a PDF or something, and it listed every model that they'd ever made, and it was a really good reference. I think I'm on Twitter as let me just check. I think it's Jennifer.e.Kirk. Let me just double check. Let me just check who I am on Twitter. Who am I? Oh no! I tell a lie. That's my Instagram thing. Now on Twitter, I am. This is all one word. At Jennifer Kirk 667. So if you find me on Twitter, and what you'll find is, let's have a look. For some reason, yeah. Oh, so I can. Let me just see. Right, 3. So I can hold my phone up to the camera. And that's the picture that you'll find on Twitter. So there's probably an easy way of getting it to show on the screen, but I haven't found it yet. I don't know why I'm showing you on my phone. I'm using a computer. I'm using Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I keep meaning to buy a Dapol Class 8. And actually, what happens is I end up buying stuff like this, or the Bachmann Rail Operation Division Robinson 8K, so the 3000 class, the Great Westernized version, because like, oh my word, the price is really good. I must have one of them. So I will eventually get the Class 8. Right, let's have a look. Oh my god, that Terrier looks amazing. Yeah, they're really good. Kelly operated one at Wally a few years ago, and I lay it with 2 of them. Heljan Crows, very smooth operated general, but occasionally finicky. I suppose. I mean, I think one of the reasons that they've not made anymore is simply the cost. I'd venture that perhaps that they feel that basically the cost that they would have to put them out at to make any money is more than people would be prepared to pay. In terms of a graph B, I have run live steam in snow, good fun. I've actually run electric trains in the snow, it has to be said. Double O gauge, nonetheless. So I'm just going to go and try and find that now, and then I can show you it. Let me see. Chug. Let's have a look. Video manager. You can't see any of this. You're just wondering, like, she's just staring intently into space and mumbling things from time to time. When did I do it? Let's see. Oh gosh, it's a little while ago now. I did a video where we had the right type of snow. British Rail always used to go on. Well, Britain's railways always went on about the wrong type of snow, and all the trains would grind to a halt. Well, funnily enough, earlier last year, probably about the same time as this last year. I'm just trying to find it. We had the right type of snow, which is essentially very dry, fluffy snow. And what that meant was that it didn't clump, it didn't stick together. And I ran these trains in the snow. I'm just trying to find it. Where have you gone? Somewhere. Gosh, I've got a lot of videos here. Chug, chug, chug. Come on, YouTube. Somewhere here. I will eventually find. Yeah, here we are. Running trains in deep snow outdoors. So this is, you've got to bear in mind that this doesn't exist anymore because I have redeveloped the Garden Railway. So let's just see. I've got to be careful making this full screen. Is that the one I want? No, 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 no. Have I just broken it? Cinema mode. There we go. That's the one I want. So let's just zip through me chatting to the camera. And that's what the railway looked like. You can see there, it's still snowing at the time. And I got the trains to run through that. And I wasn't expecting them to work, it has to say. I honestly thought I was going to stand by the I didn't even bother to remove the brick from the other side. That was there's a piece of roofing felt underneath that just to protect the entrance. I honestly thought, it has to be said, that it was not going to run. And if anybody's wondering why that shark disappeared, it's simply because it fell off before the train charged for the outside world. So continuity issue there. But I honestly thought it wasn't going to get far at all, and it really did surprise me. Here it comes. And look, there it's like, I described it. It went through the snow like a ferret up a northerner's trouser leg. Struggling a bit there. I had to give it a few nudges. But it's like the wheels were spinning. But once it got a bit of momentum going, it was just, there we are, it's off. And it just went. I think there it struggled a bit because the snow wouldn't fall out of the way because the girder bridge. But there it's just like, who needs a snow plough? But unfortunately, all of this Garden Railway is now, well, I say unfortunately, it's, the Biohack plough wasn't out at this point. I think it was released the following month. Yeah, it would have been nice to try it. I'll be honest with you. Had the Garden Railway survived a little bit longer, then yes, I would have gone that way. But shortly after the snow all melted, I discovered that the actual the wood underneath was rotten, so it all got demolished and then redeveloped into the O gauge Garden Railway. So there wasn't room for both. So what rose from the ashes of this going rotten and having to be demolished was the O gauge Garden Railway. Let's have a look down the comments. Oh, we got a troll. Where's the troll? Yeah, I see him. I think they've gone anyway. They got bored because everybody ignored them. So let me just. So I don't know whether I think you will see a different live chat feed to yeah. Yeah, I think they nobody rose to the bait and they just got ignored, so they didn't really post anything else. But I think that's the troll. Um, it's okay. I'm getting good at this. I like banning people. um, but yeah, the only trouble with that was one thing I will warn you: if you try doing this with your garden railway, and Angus, I don't think you'll get this problem. I don't know whether you get snow in New South Wales, but um, the lead locomotive did kind of get a little bit gummed up. The snow actually got up into the bogies, the gear chain, and it ran fine like that. But when it dried out, I think it left a deposit on the contacts and the wheels. So it took a little bit of cleaning to get it going again. I didn't have to dismantle it, but I had to sort of give it a helping push until it got going, and then it kind of self-cleaned itself. But certainly, it just shows you can have double O in the garden. I have heard of people having N gauge in the garden, but the problem with that is you then get into the realms that the wind will actually just push your trains off the track. Yeah, there we go. That was my foray into garden railways in the snow. Excuse me. I can't go out there right now because the problem I've got is that it's snowing really hard, it's really cold, and it's dark. It's really quite dark, so I wouldn't see much, and you wouldn't either. And it's not pleasant being out in what is now amounting to a blizzard. I'm looking on the cameras that you can't see, and it's funny actually. It goes completely white. It's like somebody's just like boiling a kettle straight in front of the cameras. Right. Yeah, O gauge in the garden. I think O gauge is probably the smallest scale that is reliable in the garden. Certainly for a ground level garden railway. Some people have managed to get double O to run reliably in the garden. I did actually get it to run quite reliably, it has to be said. But realistically, O gauge is probably a better way to go for most people. I've not run mine an awful lot, but certainly I'm looking forward to the next year. And I've built the new one at ground level, so there's no wood involved. It's a concrete base, so this should last forever, really. Right, Angus's trains. Yeah, only occasionally in some parts of New South Wales when it gets really cold. Yeah, I mean, it's something here. We don't get it as bad here as people in the same latitude. So, for example, we're on the same latitude here as parts of Norway, and also, whenever you see all things about like the blizzards in New York, and the really bad snowstorms that they have in the American East Coast, we're the same latitude as there, but we don't get that kind of bad weather. It's only very occasionally that we'll get like really deep snow. Warrington train spotted 2778. When does it snow? All the bad weather damage the track. You have it outside. No, actually, the Pico track. Now, a lot of people do worry about this, and the Pico track is UV stable. I don't know about things like Tillig, who also make track, or Kato, but certainly Pico's wooden sleeper track is UV stable, and that means that it will not degenerate when exposed to particularly UV light sunshine. Don't get the concrete sleepered track or the steel sleepered track, well, their representation of it, because the plastic that's used in the bases for those is not UV stable, because it's a different plastic to get the different colours, and they will crumble into dust. So always go for the wooden sleeper, well, the representation of the wooden sleeper track, and you'll be grand in the garden. It doesn't mind getting covered in mud, getting covered in snow. It really doesn't bother it. do leave expansion gaps, because it will expand and contract. Michael's underscore a fault. I am in South Australia and tomorrow it's going to be 45 degrees. Yeah, I've heard that you've had up to didn't you hit sort of 49 degrees or something? There's a really bad heat wave. Is it bad in terms of? I've always found when it's really cold, it's easier to warm yourself up than it is to cool yourself down. And whenever we get heat waves here, last summer we had an amazing heat wave, temperatures over 30, mid-30s in some places, which is very hot for this country. And the problem with this country is it gets humid when it gets hot. And we're not geared up to that. So we don't have air conditioning or anything like that. So you end up lying in bed at night, you've got the windows wide open, you've got fans going, and you just can't sleep. And that's awful. I like transport. What about Hornby or Pico set track? As far as I'm aware, the sort of the dark coloured bases of track, certainly more modern track. I wouldn't want to try it with something like Hornby 00 track from the 1960s. But as far as I know, the modern Hornby, Bachmann, and Pico set track is also UV stable. But do check whether the rails themselves are steel or otherwise, because steel rails are just going to rust. Angus's trains got up to 40 degrees C in some parts of the Hunter. Yeah, I mean, it was reported here on the news, and they were saying up to about 49 degrees in some places. Angus, you know how I said I'm in New South Wales? I'm in New South Wales in the Hunter. Okay, I presume that's a region of New South Wales. So let's have a look. I'm just trying to look back up because it's very easy to miss comments when they're scrolling up quite quickly. Brockwell Lane, Jenny, have you got a Sutton Class 24? Wondering about buying one? No, I don't. I hear that it is the definitive Class 24, but you pay a price for that. And it's like with a lot of these things, you can have a gold-plated Rolls Royce if you pay for it, and it's certainly the case that. I think that in fact we're not talking about Oxford Rail, so I'm going to see if I can. Oh, you're going to have to make do with my ugly mug on the screen. What was I talking about? So I low blood sugar. That's why I've been given this. I've got low blood sugar, which means that halfway through a conversation I will forget what I've been talking about. It's really most peculiar. What was it? Sutton Class 24. There we are. Yeah. You get what you pay for. You can have gold-plated Rolls Royce if you pay for it. So you will pay for the. Oh no, cat-related departure. So the door just drifted open. I wonder what that was. But I'm still quite happy with the Bachmann Class 24. And I've got about 6 of the Bachmann Class 24s in different running numbers, and I've got some different liveries of those, and I'm personally quite happy with them. Now I know that there's a lot of flaws, and that people will point out, and it's like once you see them you can't unsee them, but my thoughts are I'm quite happy with it. I actually think it's a really nice model. If I got one of the all singing, all dancing ones, the problem is that it would be a bit like when I invested in the brand new retooled Bachmann Class 3, put it next to the older Bachmann Class 3, and overnight my entire Class 3 fleet was rendered junk. So, it's sort of like when HMS Dreadnought was launched. It sort of reset all the stats between Britain and Germany on the arms race, because all of a sudden all the previous battleships were obsolete. And so the building program started again from scratch. And I had that with the Bachmann Class 3. All of a sudden, my fleet went from about 4 or 5 of these things to 1, because I bought 1 Bachmann Class 3. And I had to start again from scratch. So it can get very expensive if you go down that route. And also, I'm also a big... I've invested very heavily in the Bachmann Class 25, and I suspect that an all-singing, all-dancing Class 24 sat next to a Bachmann Class 25 may put elements of that to shame. So I do know, Kelly, that the SLW do payment plans for the models to spread the cost, but I have an aversion to borrowing money. I have an aversion to I think the only thing that I have that is technically a loan is the mortgage on this house, and even then, I'm doing my utmost to pay it off as quickly as possible because I just don't like the idea of debts and loans, things like that. Angus's train, yes, the Hunter is a region. Right, I suspected as much. I like transport. My hobby track isn't steel, so I think it'll be fine. Yeah, I think the steel track tends to be older stuff. They moved over to like a nickel alloy for various reasons, mostly because the steel track rusted, and you didn't have to get it wet for it to rust. Atmospheric moisture would make it rust. So generally speaking, new track is pretty safe to dump it in the garden. You can leave it in the garden for years and it won't really degenerate. Brockwell Lane, what has happened to Vi Trains? Well, as far as I'm aware, Vi Trains was a management part of the management from Lima, and they made Class 37s for a while. Apparently they're really good, but I think they just faded away. It takes a lot of money to start up and run a model railway company, and I guess some companies make it. Hornby, Bachmann, Daypole, Heljan. Others don't. I think somebody asked about Heljan earlier on. I do now remember seeing a comment, meant to come back to it but didn't. Actually, yeah, Warrington Train Spotter 2778. Do Heljan still bring out new trains, or did that company go out of business? Nope, Heljan is still on the go. They've just brought out some new. I think they've brought out some new Class 33s, 26s, and 27s. They also not that long since brought out a new batch of the Class 14s, and they also brought out the Class 7 shunter. And there are things in the pipeline. I must actually look up when their announcements are made. Let's have a look. D827 Kelly, just don't have them on at the same time as one way around that. Yeah, easier said than done. It's moot point now. All of that fleet of old Class 3s, I either desperately sold on and got a pittance for them because nobody else wanted them, or I think the last two of them were given to my nephew and became a part of my nephew's model railway, and they're just toys now. They get played with. I like transport. Yes, Vi Trains also did the 47 as well. Let's have a look. Angus's trains, yeah, you're right. Heljan did make the Class 33 train pack. It was the Forley oil terminal one. So you've got some of their tanker wagons and a Class 33. I think it was in BR blue, full yellow ends, but a D number. So I looked at it and went, if it had been a tops number, I'd have been in there. Alan Reynolds, loving your stream too. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. D87 Kelly, new 28s, new batch of 35s. Apparently their high mech is pretty good actually. A number of O gauge releases too. Yes. I'm struggling to remember what the O gauge releases are, but they are in the pipeline. So yeah, Heljan are still on the go, and they also did the 009, the lid locomotive. They've come out. They look really nice, but apparently they are quite fragile. So, all Heljan stuff's fragile. I've bought one O-gauge Heljan wagon. It's one of the tanker wagons. I bought it as a gift for my father, and that's actually worked quite well. It's not fallen apart. It's not shed bits everywhere. So some of their stuff is quite robust. So Angus's trains. Have you heard of Australia AD60 Garrett made in the UK? No, not familiar with that one, I have to say. The only Garretts that I'm aware of ready to run is that Hattons did I think it was the LMS Garrett, and they're currently not available, although they have announced that they're doing them in N gauge. There are a lot of spare parts. You can assemble one out of spare parts from the Hattons website, I noticed, but they don't sell a complete one, which is a bit of a shame because I kind of fancied one of them. The other one is that Roundhouse Engineering do a Tasmanian Garrett in, I think it's SM32 or G45. And again, it's a lovely looking locomotive, and that was the other reason for going O-gauge in the garden. was that it's not just O gauge that runs on O gauge track. SM32 will run on O gauge track because it's the right width. It's much the same way that 009 will run on N gauge and 016.5 will run on OO/HO. So part of my long-term plans is I really kind of fancy a remote control live steam locomotive, possibly from the Roundhouse stable, to run in the garden, to run on the same track. And I've had my eye on something like the Silver Lady, which we went and used and abused 2 of those across the Great Glen in Scotland. And I know what they cost, and they're like, how much? And apparently there certainly was a big waiting list for them because so much interest in them was kindled by that TV series. That Roundhouse was inundated with orders, so there certainly was a bit of a waiting list for them. Let's have a look. Angus's trains based on the UK one, just bigger. There were a few different ones actually in the UK. The Garretts. There's some narrow gauge ones. There was actually one that was built for an industrial concern, which was an 0440 standard gauge Garrett, and I have seen a photo of it, but not preserved. Unclear how successful it was. I think the LNER had one as well, or several, possibly. Graph B. I'm tempted to get the Heljan Metropolitan Bobo Electric, a great looking loco. Yeah, I've got 2 of those. I bought one brand new, and then I got another one second hand because it was in as new condition. It was a different livery to the one that I already had, and I'll be honest, they are a lovely, lovely, a lovely model. So yeah, well recommend the Heljan Metropolitan Bobo. But one word of warning, very, very fragile. Be ever so careful how you handle them. And it's the detail on the bogies. That's what you got to watch. It is so easy for that to just self-destruct. So just be really careful. Leslie Dickinson. I'm hoping to buy a Heljan Bayer Garrett that's advertised as a pre-order at Rails of Sheffield. Quite pricey though. Interesting. I was not familiar with that. So, Rails of Sheffield. Rails of... Let's just see. Rails of Sheffield. Angus's train's been here since 6 a.m. now 8 a.m. Australia. Oh well. I'm really glad to have you along, actually. But don't miss anything on my behalf. I don't want to be the one that you have to blame for being late for something. But let's have a look for the Garrett on Rails of Sheffield's website. So, oh right, yes, you're. Now this is interesting. So this presumably means that the Hattons one. It's a bit like how Model Zone used to have the. They'd do a model and they'd have the first run. So, for example, the 8-ton BR cattle wagon was one. The TPO coach, the first Mark 1 TPO coach, was another. They got like the initial dibs on it for a while, but then it became general release. The Mark 1 horse box from TMC has gone the same way. It would appear that the Heljan Bayer Garrett falls into that as well. And that's interesting. There's not that much more than what... Oh, I say. Stop the press. That looks very amazing. That's a bit like the Great Eastern Railway Grey that N7's just come out with. Due 2019. So let's have a look. Second batch feature a revised chassis and motor, which means that it's not going to have some of the problems that plagued the version that Hattons were doing. Now that is interesting. Let's have a look. Warrington Train Spotter 2778. Is there any model shops near you where you live, Jenny, or have you closed down? Some closed, but others are open, is the best way I can describe it. We lost Farnworth Model Centre. Used to love going there. Unfortunately, the owner passed away. That shut down. That was a great model shop. It had all the little bits and pieces, and it was really convenient for here. We've also lost Model Rail Burnley. Used to go there a lot, especially a long time ago. There used to be one, Milnes Bridge Models. I can remember going there. There used to be one on Halliwell Road in Bolton. That's gone. But Bolton Model Mart is still there. Holton Model Centre in Bolton is also still there. I believe that there's one in Daisy Hill, but never been there. There's one in Lee, but I haven't been there, but people say good things about it. I go to Arcadia Models. That's really good. There also still is one at Bess's of the Barn. I'm desperately trying to remember what it's called. That's still going. Have been there, but not for a good long while. Model Zone is not still going. Model Zone went bankrupt. It's a great shame because they were a good high street presence. But Farnworth Model Centre was the best ever. Philip Page, I totally agree with you. I used to love going in there and picking stuff up, and he had a really good second-hand cabinet. Culcheth Model Centre, Philip Page, you're right about that. I've not been there, but I'm aware of them. So the model shops still are out there, and I have to say to people that it's use it or lose it, and in a lot of instances, these model shops will match the prices that other model shops are doing. So I know Tim at Arcadia, he tends to check between Hattons and Rails and see what prices they're offering, and he will match those prices. So it's really good of them to do that, and I think it does. It's really good customer service that they do that. They don't have to do that, but they do. Some shops will match that, others, for whatever reason, won't. But if you go to a shop that has stock in for a while, say this time and time again, and you can find older versions of the model. So the example I've been given is that Class 411, which is at Holton Model Centre, 133 quid, brand new. You can pick these things up. So it's well worth supporting your local model shops. Right, the one at Horwich used to be called Trains and Diecast. I have been to that one a long time ago, actually, and it was interesting. But I just popped through. And John Nutman, I know you used to have one here in Southampton. Oh, Southampton Model Centre, is that gone? I have actually been to that one. I did a job down at Southampton Docks, and was it Southampton Docks? There was something. Sorry, just being sent a message. My hair's going funny. It does this from time to time. It doesn't tell jokes or anything. It just kind of... Let me just sort that out. I can see... Oh, I can see myself in the thingy. It sort of droops and leaves a gap. And I always feel very self-conscious about that gap it leaves. Because I have a very high hairline. They always say, if there was one thing you could change about yourself, what would it be? For me, it would probably be my hair. I hate my hair. Beatties, oh God, yeah, blast from the best. But Southampton Model Centre. All right, meanwhile, back at the ranch. Southampton Model Centre, I did go there once, and it would probably be, gosh, that's probably about 15, maybe even 20 years ago. Didn't know they'd gone. They used to advertise a lot in... Sorry to be a killjoy, but you might have problems using SM32 on O-scale tractors. Most SM32 models have wheels made to O-gauge course scale, so the flanges might be too deep for your track. Ooh. Alright, in that case, what I'll probably do is I will check with somebody else's model. Thanks for the advice there, Graph B. I'll have to look into that. I do know somebody with a Mamod, and I might try and persuade him to either lend me it or bring it around for a running session, and we'll see how well that goes, because I suspect the Mammoth will also have very coarse flanges. Kelly, Miss Beatties. Yeah, but I thought Beatties they were absorbed by Model Zone. I remember Beatties in I think it was the Metro Centre. because that became a model zone. Oh, I've been dinged a lot here. Let's see. Let's have a look. Let me just check if it's important. Right. So I was just looking into something. Yeah, actually, Kelly, it's a good point. Other wheels are available, so you could change them if you wanted. It's also the case my dad could probably turn the flanges down on his lathe. That's another way you could go. Angus's trains. Jenny, I got a joke. Okay, go on. Let's see, what joke have you got? Love BT spent everybody spent a lot of money in BTs back in the day. They were like the place. There used to also be, do you remember Toy Master as well? There used to be one in Bolton. Second-hand shop near me has a Mammoth Life steam loco for 165. Oh god, they're expensive. Yes. Model Zone bought a lot of shops and BTs when it started struggling. Yeah. Angus's train. Have you heard of the wooden train? No, I haven't heard of the wooden train. Colin Williams, hi. SM32 rails, 32mm gauge, but it's code 200, right. But O-gauge track is code 124. SM32 have a deeper flange, more generous dimensions. O-gauge are much finer tolerance, so run on the chairs. Right. Angus's trains, it wouldn't go. Ah, right, okay, yeah, wouldn't go. Good one. Fred's trains, hello. Hello to you too. Philip Page, Tinnis Woods in West Orton was there since I was a kid. Not heard of that one. I like transport. Can we talk about modern locos for a bit? Okay. Let's have a look at Heljan. Actually, let's go to the Heljan. We were talking about Heljan models a little bit earlier on. Heljan very much are the. Why am I going? Let's have a look. So bear with me. I'm on. You can't see the screen I'm currently hunting on. So yeah, Heljan, the kings of the rather strange. Let's have a look. The rather strange and obscure prototypes. I think there's only there's only a. I'm trying to think what models haven't been done. Class 1s, Class 2s, Class 6s haven't been done if you don't count the Hornby. Class 10, 11 and 12, you can re-livery a Bachmann or a Hornby Class 8, though the Class 12's tricky because it has box wheels. Class 13, now that's one which I'd love to see a Class 13 turn up. What am I looking for? Diesel locomotive, aluminum, diesel, D, it's the fourth letter of the alphabet. Somewhere up here, diesel train packs, diesel locos. Heljan. All right. Yeah, new Class 6 would be well worth a bit. Heljan have done lots. We're still waiting, actually, for the 21 and the 29 from Daypol. They are announced, but who knows whether it's going to be coming. Leaders, but actually, didn't Kerno Model Centre announce that they're doing... I think they're doing all of those apart from the Fell. To be honest, Warrington Transport, it's not just modern locomotives. All have become eye-watering prices. Ready to run GT3 is proposed. Actually, is that who's doing that one? That sounds interesting. Let's have a look. Did you know Class 20 118 is still in the rail freight livery? Yes, and I think Bachmann do a model of that. Brockwell Lane, Hatton 66. Actually, yeah. The 66 has become this sort of hotbed of controversy, and that is because of Hatton's announcing their full fat model going head to head with Bachmann, and I think that has caused a bit of a ruckus. And what we've now seen is that Bachmann have announced it's the only model in the Bachmann price range that has gone down in price, not up. And that's quite telling. I think this is Bachmann's way of saying, oh, no, you don't. And they've dropped the RRP by, I think it's £20. So it's now cheaper than the Hatton's model. Oh, excuse me. Whereas before, they were pretty much the same sort of prices. with the Hattons one being more detailed potentially. So Bachmann have dropped their prices, and they have also announced a number of the liveries that Hattons have announced. So things like the flying dustbin or flying dustman, whichever one it is. That one, the biffer, the bin one, and there's, I think, the large logo blue has also been announced. And so that's very much parking their Class 66s on Hattons' lawn. Meanwhile, in the background, Hornby have announced the same liveries, but it's their older Railroad X Lima model. Nowhere near as well detailed, is cheaper. And I think the battle of the Class 66s is going to be won by Bachmann. Plain and simple, because Bachmann don't have to do the R&D, they don't have to do the development, the model already exists, the tooling already exists. They can always get it to the market first. And that means that whoever gets to the market first is the winner. It's as simple as that. And if they're coming in slightly cheaper, it's the Oxford Rail Adams radial effect, where they got to the market first and they got to the market cheaper. And I think that Hornby lost a lot of money with their Adams radial because they were late to the party and more expensive. And you see it now. The Hornby Adams radial, bargain bin everywhere. Nobody's paying full price for that because Oxford Rail mopped up. And I think with the battle of the 66s, Bachmann will make sure that they get in there first and will mop it up. And I think it's going to be quite difficult for Hattons in that one. The Hornby model is aimed at a different market. That's the budget model. It's not competing directly with either Hattons or with Bachmann. So I think that, that's going for a different market. So they're not going to interfere with each other, even though they've announced some of the same liveries. Right, let's have a look. Kerno are doing the Bulliard diesels and the 41. Yeah, that Class 41's been announced for an awfully long time. I Like Transport. Hornby's 2019 Collectors Club loco will be a network rail Bagnall. That's going to be entirely fictional. And I have to say, I preferred the Collectors Club from Hornby when you had a choice of either having the Locomotive or a voucher. And the voucher could be used from their online shop. And that's because for people like me, I have no interest in the Railroady 040 shunting locomotive. And unfortunately, if you've got either a child in mind that will welcome that as a model, that's fine. If you yourself are happy with just like one of these pocket rocket locomotives, that's fine. But a lot of people would have no use for it. So it's a shame in a way that they don't do the vouchers anymore, because I think it would encourage a lot more people perhaps to bite the bullet and join the Collectors Club. Let's have a look. GT3 from a new manufacturer. Somebody told me about that when I was at Worley. Somebody mentioned that there was a new manufacturer coming into the fray. Brockwell Lane, never liked the split across the front of the Bachmann 66. Yeah, there's a few people said there's actually with the bogies as well. There's a few little gribbles going on in there, but it's you pay your prices, you take your choice. Fred Strange, do you like the Daypole Class 121? Yeah, it looks really nice. It is quite expensive for a single coach effectively. That's a lot of money. Daypole are doing a Class 68 in Transpennine livery to go with the Mark V, I think. Class 68s, it's like I am aware that they exist, but I'm afraid it's not really my thing. So I don't keep abreast of what's going on. I'm just looking actually down. Yeah, we talked earlier about the new. Oh, interesting. Oh, stop the press. Heljan are doing a Class 25-3. They're all 25-3s, or is there a 25-2, or they're doing the 25-9 as well, which I think is a 25-3, just refurbished. It may not look any different. So interesting. The definitive Class 25 may be upon us. That is interesting. Let's have a look. I haven't watched anything. I haven't watched Sam Strain's video on a live stream on the Hattons Class 66. As I said before, I don't work with any kind of involvement with manufacturers or retailers. So I don't get the inside track on any of these things. I have to wait until stuff turns up and can be bought, just like the rest of you, I'm afraid. So, if a manufacturer came to me and offered me the chance to review things, yeah, I'd certainly consider it. But at the moment, I'm kind of making it a bit of a selling point that in not having any relationship with a retailer or a manufacturer, I can tell it as it is. And you'll find out tomorrow that my review of the Oxford Rail N7 is probably coloured a little bit by the fact that I managed to get a dud, and I was a bit annoyed at their quality control because it wouldn't work. John Nutman, I don't go much on railroad anyway. Yeah, the railroad is appealing for a different section of the market in many respects. Although saying that the Crosty 9F is technically a railroad model, but it's a pretty good model. Although the prices have now gone to the point where it's not really a railroad model anyway. I like transport. I prefer the premium stuff to railroad. Yeah, I totally agree with you. But, again, you pays your money, you takes your choice. Just 25.3 from Heljan. Bachmann are retooling their 25. And with their 24.1. Yeah, the 24.1, we've been waiting for a while for that. Now, this does set off another important question, and that is, when a manufacturer retools something, is it a good or a bad thing? And I'm very apprehensive about Bachmann retooling their Class 25. Is it going to be radically different from the previous one? If it is, I've got about 15 Bachmann Class 25s, and I like them. I think they're a really good model. But if it turns out they're a rubbish model, and that the new version is so different that it's like that comparison between the Class 3s that we talked about before, or possibly what's going to happen with the Terrier, and certainly what is what has put me off buying the Hunslet Austerity from DJ Models, because I've got so many of the Hornby Hunslet Austerities. It could get very expensive. So I'm interested to see, but apprehensive. Sorry, not Kerno. I was thinking of the Bulliard Diesel 10. Yeah, I know that Kerno's going through some of the weird esoteric southern diesels. Fred's Trains, what is your favourite livery? Mine is Originals Network Southeast. Actually, Original Network Southeast, the toothpaste livery. That is a good livery. I do like Intercity Executive, the Swallow livery. That I really like as well. I also like Regional Railways. I'm always disappointed that Bachmann don't produce more of their Mark 1s in the clean Regional Railways livery. I know they've done a weathered one full of passengers, but it's really expensive and I don't want it weathered. I want it clean to match the rest of the stock. So if we could have more Regional Railways Mark 1s, yes, I love them. But then in terms of going further back, I really like liveries such as Southeastern and Chatham Railway, fully ornate lined green. That livery is something special, but I also like Great Central Railway livery. Again, it's sort of like a slightly darker lined green. It's nice. Caledonian Railway blue is quite eye-catching. And Midland Railway, the maroony colour, this Crimson Lake, that is a good look, be it on a Midland compound or a Princess Coronation class Duchess of Abercorn. It's a timeless colour. Really is good. Angus's Trains. Bye, Jenny. Nice show, live stream. Thanks. Really good to have you along. Hope you can tune in. We're going to be doing another one next week, hopefully. Same time, 7 o'clock. Today's is an extra because the Oxford Rail announcements, even though we haven't really talked a lot about them. But Merseyrail's an interesting one. Actually, Merseyrail and regional railways have some degree of similarity in that it's using that orangey yellow instead of some of the bluer bands. But certainly the Stanier brake van, if that appears in the Merseyrail styled regional railway livery from Hornby, then that's one that certainly I would really go for. Leslie Dickinson, I have a Railroad Crosty 9F and it's a good model. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about the Crosty 9F, and of course you can also they do a TTS sound chip for that, so it's quite inexpensive to actually fit that with sound. And that's another thing which is really, really good from Hornby, the TTS sound. I always speak really highly of it, and that is from an extensive user of TTS sound, a big DCC convert with the sound, and it's a really good way of fitting sound on a budget, in my opinion. Anyway, Angus, you have a good time, and we'll see you later. D827 Kelly, old Hornby Lima motors can be replaced with CD DVD drive motors. Yeah, I've heard that as well, and they're quite plentiful. You can either strip them out of old devices that are no longer used, and what you'll find is that when things like CD-ROM drives die, it's not usually the motor that's died, it's something else. So the motor is still perfectly good. You can strip that out and use it. So you don't even need to necessarily buy a motor. Excuse me. It's also, you can buy them dirt cheap direct from China. Brockwell Lane, what's the difference between TTS and normal range sound? Right, there's a few different differences. As far as I can tell, one of the biggie ones that you'll notice is that a TTS sound chip, if you run it on DC, whereas with an ordinary sound chip, something like a Lock Sound or a Zemo, you will still get some degree of sound out of the thing. You can't control it, but it will give you sound when it moves. The TTS chip will not do that. It's just silent on DC. It will run on DC, but it won't give you any kind of sound. In addition, I think there's much less in the way of number of sounds you can play at the same time. So on the TTS chip, you've got your main motion noises, so like your diesel engine or the chuffing from the cylinders and that, the actual fundamental bass noise of the locomotive. And you can have one other function sound played at the same time, be it a whistle, a horn, flange squeal, things like that. So it's limited down to 2 channels effectively. Other than that, they are pretty good. So that's as far as I can tell now. But actually, John Nutman, that reminds me to go to try and get a chip for my Class 40. If you're wanting the TTS chip, I do know that, and other retailers will still have them as well. But if you're struggling to get them, Tim at Arcadia does still have the Class 40 sound chips on the shelves. Fred's Trains, do you like the Class 17 Clayton? I think it's amazing. I saw it last year and the clag was amazing. I'm presuming you're talking about the preserved example that lives down at the Princess Riseborough. It survived as a shunter at Ribble Cement is how it actually survived. But yeah, I've actually got a model of that Ribble Cement one from Heljan. I quite like it. They were beset with problems with the motors, but kudos to Heljan. They did warranty repairs on all of the affected models. So it gets a bad rap, but undeservedly so, because they came through with the customer service. Brockwell Lane, no quality differences. The sound actually that I've heard from some of the chips are really good. My particular favourites is the Hornby TTS Class 20 chip is superb. That is a really, really good one. So if you're looking to sound fit a Class 20, be it a Bachmann or a Hornby one, that TTS chip is really good and I can well recommend it. I had problems with the Class 37 one. I found that wasn't really as good as I was hoping. I do have another different manufacturer Class 37 chip, which is spot on, and you can tell the difference between those. The steam locomotives seem to be that the actual steam noises seem to be, it's like they've recorded one locomotive and used the same sound over and over again. The whistles are different. And in many ways with a steam locomotive, the whistle is the defining characteristic, and they do have the different whistle noises. But I'm I've yet to work out whether there is different noises going on there for whether the prototype that it's going into is a 2-cylinder, a 3-cylinder, or a 4-cylinder locomotive. And in my opinion, that's something that would change the sound quite considerably to how the locomotive sounds when it's running. And I'm not entirely convinced that the TTS chips are doing that. Colin Williams, TTS speakers are poor, so need the fact to the fitting of the better ones. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And I think a lot of the problem with the speakers is the size. They're just like, what's with this sort of big dinner plate of a speaker? They won't even fit inside half the locos they're supposed to go into. But the Class 20 sound chip comes with a speaker that is the perfect fit to the Bachmann chassis. It actually fits straight in. It's a good speaker. It's like a long oblong-shaped speaker, and it fits in the recess and screws into the recess directly into it. That is in the Bachmann locomotive. So actually, you don't get the problem with the speakers with the Class 20 model. So I'll just throw that out there. Let's have a look. Fred's train. So you're going to miss the Greater Anglia Class 321s when they are replaced. Oh, the old Ted Rogers. No, because I never travel on them. Well out of my area. I can't say that it's something I've ever really thought about. Let's have a look. I like transport, though sometimes hard. You can DCC almost everything. Yeah, I've seen people DCC some quite old models. I've even seen old Triang and Hornby 00 models DCC'd. But I suspect with those, the motor has to be in tip-top shape. So it needs to get an armature rewind if needed. And you need to check it with an ammeter first, otherwise you'll blow the chips. And I suspect that they probably require the same type of chips that something like O-gauge models that draw a higher current would need. So you can't just put any old chip in them. But yeah, certainly there's a lot you can do. And I do know somebody who's currently working on a project. Their sound and light fitting, I think it's the old Hornby Class 142 model, but they're actually putting in 4 different light functions. So they're going to have, like the direction lights, the internal lights, and also the lights left and right for when the doors open. So there's a lot you can do. You're really limited only by your imagination on some of these models. D827 Kelly, Lego Man Biffo, and other premium sound chips using Zemo or ESU chips, 100 plus on top of the Loco, but you can vary the sounds via CV settings, and they have many more sounds on the chips. Well, yeah, it has to be said that the TTS sounds have something like 25 different sounds on the chips. You do have a lot of variety, and a lot of them are like different whistle noises, different horn noises. So you get different tones: 2-tone, high tone, low tone, all that sort of things. SCR 1981. All my locos are 40 years old and now DCC. Yeah, it can be done, and it's something that I need to do with the ex-Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway pugs that I've got. I want to DCC chip them, and I'm going to have to hardwire them because it's an older style model, and even the new ones that have been announced from Hornby are not DCC ready out of the box, so I'm going to have to do a hardwire, but I'm fairly confident I can do that. Graph B, I will miss 321s when they go, 315s too. Again, not my area, so I don't really have an opinion on them, to be honest with you. I did miss the Class 101s, and I think we also had 108s, and going back a bit further, I think we had 105s around here. And the one that I always missed was, and I think it was the 105, but I could be wrong, it was the one that you would be sat straight behind the driver's compartment and you could see right through. So you could actually watch the route as you were going. So you get a seat on the front row behind the driver's cab. And as long as the blinds were up, you could just see right through. And I've got happy memories of riding the rails down to Manchester and also up to Blackburn as well when we went ice skating. And I think it was a Class 105, but I can't be certain because I was quite young. Angus's trains. I am back after watch another video to catch up on the Oxford Rail announcements. I think we've done all the Oxford Rail announcements. There wasn't really an awful lot, it has to be said. Let's have a look. Are we getting spammed? Yeah, just bear with me. Let's just get rid of the spammer. Let's report and Just, yeah, report. And then you are getting banned, my little troll. We're going to hide the user on the channel. Goodbye. Right, there we go. Where were we? Ah, yes, the prologue. Yeah. A 101 still runs at I can't pronounce it. Llanklis near Oswestry Street. I have a film on my channel. Yeah, I've seen films of that running. There's also a class, is it 107? The Tanat Valley Railway as well. D827 Kelly, Lego Man Biffo is a company that put custom sounds on ESU chips sold via DC kits. Yeah, I need to start investigating some of this stuff, but DCC sound can get very expensive very quickly, so I've got to be careful. Let's have a look. Yeah. Oh, so it was the Class 101 Warrington Train Spotter. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I didn't realise it was the 101. It would have been sort of late 1980s. I remember riding on it. Angus Trains, how was that? Didn't see them. I don't know whether it may be that the chat. I get to see every single message that comes up. I'm guessing, but it may be filtering things. It's something to do with it. It's why the super chat or whatever it's called exists. Is I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's people can buy a position so that to guarantee their comment is shown to everybody. But I'm seeing everybody's comments, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all the comments are getting shown. But I can see them all, so I'm reading through and trying to answer as many as I can. I like transport. I like Lay's DCC. They're cheap. I'll have to look into that actually. Leslie Dickinson, I'm going down that route also. SCR 1981 Worth Lima models. Yeah, there's a lot of people have some big collections from the 80s and 90s. Fred's Trains. Do you think the Bachmann 117 will be any good? Yeah, I think the Bachmann model will be good, but you'll pay a price for that, and that's the trade-off. It's whether or not you're prepared to pay the kind of money that they're going to cost when they do finally turn up. I like transport. I wish models were cheaper. Amen to that. I remember the good old days where you could buy Bachmann branch line locomotives brand new for like £34.50. I remember paying brand new for, I think it was Class 8s or Class 25s. So, we had the good times when a lot of production first moved out to China. And unfortunately, they were exploiting the Chinese quite a bit. The Chinese, rightfully so, really wanted better wages. And also, I think there's a case of you corner the market, catch people's interests, then you raise the prices. It's just how capitalism works, Philip Page, the Tanat Valley 101 is in lovely condition. I was sure it was a 107, yeah, it is actually, but there's a Mark 1 coach painted as if it's a DMU coach at the back. There's actually somebody lives in it, but that's in a horrendous condition. There's some real rust holes through the end of that. But the Tanat Valley Railway is quite an interesting little thing. The fact that they just dug the track out of the ground, it had just been buried. Angus's Train, keep up the good work, Jenny. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thank you for that. It makes it all worthwhile that people appreciate it. D827 Kelly, Airfix kits are made in India now. Yeah, there's a lot of production starting to globe trot a little bit. They're looking for the cheap workforces and things that don't require finesse of putting together. I think they've started trialing getting stuff done in India, but I do know as well that things like the Humbrol paints, they brought the production back to the UK because the quality control was just not there. Angus's Trains, my favourite video of yours is the A4 video. Oh, thank you very much. I think I've done a couple actually, and there's some running videos as well. So there's a few on the channel. John Nutman, hope you don't mind me saying it. Nice to meet you after seeing you on that programme. Oh, well, thank you very much. Nice to see you along too. I do get out and about, and actually it always surprises me a little bit when I go to model shops when I go to model railway exhibitions, I do get recognised quite a lot. So it's always nice to meet people, because it's very insular. I'm here in a room and there's nobody else here, well, apart from Zoe playing computer games in the other room. So it's always nice to get out and meet people. I think that's one of the reasons that I really like these live streams, is because you get to interact with people, and that's really, really good. I like transport. Where's the Tanat Valley Railway? It's actually near. Oh, I'm going to butcher the name again. Llanclis, near Rosworth Street. If you follow I told you 107 at Tannet. Yeah. The reason I remember is because I thought the 107s were from Glasgow. They're like the 108s, but slightly narrow body, aren't they? Something like that. It's such an interesting little railway. It is the railway that the scrap man forgot, and the story on that is actually that when the railway closed, scrap metal was pretty worthless, and BR had this thing that they liked stuff to be ripped up fairly quickly, but they had to pay the scrap men to do it, because the scrap metal at the time wasn't really worth what it cost to salvage it. So they employed a scrap man to clear the track from the line up to the quarry. And the scrap man, I think he got rid of a few token bits, but then he just buried the rest and then went to collect his money for doing the job. And nobody really checked. And then when, I think it's Mark Higgins, the guy behind Tanat Valley Railway, when he went to buy it from the British Rail Residuary Board, he said he was mortified that they were going to come and rip up the track before the sale was complete, because that was the thing they'd do. They'd salvage the track because it was worth quite a bit as scrap, and it was never included in the price. And because the BR Residual Board thought that as far as the records were concerned, it had been cleared. But Mark knew the track was there because he'd seen it, delved into the undergrowth. It was still there. He got the track included in the sale. Angus's trains. I'm at the A4 train pack review. Ah, yes, I do remember the Northumberland train pack. Thank you very much. That was actually one of my really early ones. The Nantmore Visitor Centre. Yeah, Nantmore Quarry it is. It's an interesting place. There's so much stuff there. I did a video on my channel when I went and explored, and I did spend some time at the quarry, and I got to ride on the monorail as well. There's a monorail there. It's great. Let's have a look. Warrington Transporter... I keep saying transporter. Train Spotter 2778. Has anyone bought any day signals or destination monitors off Train Tech? I personally haven't, but I'm wondering if anybody else has. Brockwell Lane. I met you at Great Central Row in North a few years ago with your layout. Yeah, that was Grove Street Yard. I haven't done that exhibition for a while. I did it at least twice, possibly thrice. I think I did it 3 times. Essentially, it's. I think I overexposed it there, but not me. It's not my fault. But they like to get a variety of models through. It's natural. I don't hold it against anybody. It's not a problem. So I did 3. I think I did a year. No, 2 years in a row, year off, did another year, and then I haven't been invited back. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't sort of go round and sort of like slap people in the face and go, ha ha. It's just one of those things. I did the Nottingham show as well, the big Nottingham show. And never been back to that. But that was straight after Grove Street Yard got featured in a magazine for the first time. So it was sort of... hot topic at the time, and it tends to get you a lot of invites to shows. Fred's Trains, do you like the Class 50? Yeah, I do actually. The Hornby Super Detail Class 50 is a really good model. Now, it had its problems with the disintegrating chassis back at the beginning, and as I've just discovered, also faulty PCB boards, which work absolutely fine when you're working on DC, but when you try and DCC them, the pin 7 is wired to negative when it should be wired to positive, and it causes a big nuisance. So I've got one in Network Southeast livery. It's a really good one, a good model. I love it. It's why I like the Network Southeast livery. but I'm going to have a ponder before I DCC chip that. I've ordered a sound chip, one of the new TTS Class 50 sound chips, and it may be the case that I'm going to, have to buy a replacement PCB for it. Angus is trained, so I've been up for 4 hours watching you. Well, thank you. Really, don't miss your church. If you, I thought you were going off to the church. Don't let me make you miss things. But it's really good to have you along. Warrington Train Spotter 2778. Whereabouts in Lee is the model shop? I'd like to go and have a look at it. I don't know Lee very well, but what I do know is if you park outside, I think it's a big Tesco, just where the sort of little bypassy bit at the bottom is, cross the road, past the entrance to the shopping centre until you reach a main road. It's on that main road. It's the best way I can describe it. Model signs for you. I've never used them, but I've heard good things about them. Oh right. Sorry, I saw a thing about saying you had to go to church. I assumed that you were going immediately. So I'm not trying to force people off. No problem. I've still got an hour and 30 minutes. I'm looking at the master time. This must be the longest live stream I've done, considering it's supposed to be for the Oxford Rail announcements. Well, we've done them. Where are we? Oxford Rail announcements. That was on the Book of Face, wasn't it? Oh, let's see if we can find the Oxford Rail announcements. Oxford Rail models. Yeah, the Oxford Rail announcements. That's actually what this was notionally supposed to be about. No, nothing else has turned up on the list, but where was it? Yes, the prologue. YouTube won't let me send a link. I like transport. YouTube's a bit funny on sending hyperlinks. Fred's trains. I'm going to bed now. Night, Jenny. Night, everyone else. Good night to you too. In fact, just looking at this, blooming heck, 10 o'clock. I'm going to have to wrap this up soon because I have to get up early tomorrow to go to work as well. But we've been through the Oxford Rail releases. Really, the only thing, other than a few token liveries, we've got that J27. I think that's going to be well received for northeastern modelers, especially now that Bachmann have pushed back the retooling of their J39, which kind of falls into that kind of bracket of locomotive power. In terms of anything else, anybody got any quick questions left before I shoot off? And normal service will be resumed after this. I will go and look up if and when Heljan or Daypol do their announcements, and we'll do another live stream hopefully when that, if and when those happen. D827 Kelly, good night, Jenny. Gonna go to bed and make sure the dog is settled. Okay, good night to you too, John. I'm gonna be up in the morning too. Yeah, it is one of those things, and it's 6 minutes past 10 at night here in the UK. For those of you who are, we've got a cat coming in. For those of you who are watching this from abroad, how's the snow? Well, I'm looking at, it's still snowing, but not as heavily as before. I don't think it looks like, certainly the road itself, the snow's actually started to melt on the road, despite the fact, you coming in or going out, Fred? No, you're just going to sit in the doorway and, oh, no. Cats, eh? Yeah. I like transport. Streams appreciated. Thanks, bye. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. Brockwell, nice to talk to you too. Plug. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, plug. Don't forget, everybody, my books are still available. If you want to read my lovely science fiction goodness, then Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and Where Once the Faithful Ran, Where Once the Faithful Roamed, and Where Once the Faithful Rise are all available for all good bookshops, and some really bad ones too. You can get them through Amazon. And also, don't forget, if you want to support the channel, you're more than welcome to head on over to Patreon and check out my page there. But until next time, don't forget to like this video and look back through my other videos. Like them too, because liking is the currency of YouTube, and the more likes you get, it really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And until next time, it's been really good having you along. I really appreciated all your comments, and it's been good to chat with you all. And hopefully this will be a regular format for Shed Chat. We're going to be doing this on Mondays at 7 o'clock in the evening GMT. It's nice talking to all of you, and I'm seeing it coming up now. All the different. There's a lot of people lurking as well, and we mustn't forget the people who lurk and listen in, and hopefully we didn't go off on too many tangents. But until next time, you take really good care of yourselves, and this is me, Jenny Kirk, signing off from Shed Chat Live. Until next time, bye for now.